Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me is Kat Seelan to my left and Richard Whitbread to my far left. The assessor today is Merritt Frolick, and the recording secretary is Hada Aziz. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board. The matter pertains to assessed value reclassification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application be brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate and prepare to make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are recorded and will be part of the public record. So can you do the swearing in?
Please state your full name.
Merritt Frolick.
And do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Bradford Scott Boardroom.
And do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first property on today's docket is 1500 Regent Avenue West, and the matter is assessed value, so you can proceed with the Philip.
Sure thing. File number is 193537. Roll number is 09010474035. The assessed value was $7,226,000. I'd like to put forward a recommendation of $6,600,000.
We are not opposing the recommendation, and we are not making further submission on the file.
Okay.
I adjusted the market rent.
Rent was lowered. All right, any questions from the panel?
None. No, Mr. Sheriff. You should all be like that.
Yeah, that's an unexpected bonus to start the thing. Okay, item number 2 here. 650. No, okay, I wrote down all this cap rate and vacancy and all this, and now you tell me none of them. Okay, yeah. 615 Kernahan. All right, you can begin.
Just bear with me here for 1 sec. I was just trying to. What happened is for one of my other properties I created this package of information to share with the board. And now, under such deadlines, I could speak about it, but I had actual paper copies that I wanted to share with everyone. And it's either in here or at my desk, so that's what I'm looking for. File number is 192577. Roll number is 090099222.
Okay, guys.
00.
This is yours, okay, see there's a non-co-op requested, so.
That is correct.
Can you deal with
Yep,
non-co-op
no
first?
problem, I just wanted to do the fundamental stuff first.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is we are asking for non-compliance and following the history. of the non-compliances that for this property. On page 2, you show the history of non-compliance. We have not received a mailer from the property owner in 2017, 2015, 2013, 2011, and 2009. Mailers are an integral part of our process to ensure accurate assessments that go out. We need all the information available from business owners across the city of Winnipeg. Hard for us to do our jobs if everyone's non-compliant with regards to completing the income expense mailer. So subsequently, which is why we're asking. Before I start off any further, I want to reference, there's also the sister property on appeal. Can we look at page 13 of my brief?
Okay.
So the property that we're dealing with here right now is 615 Kernahan. And so, if you look at the border of Kernahan and Hoka, that's the property that we're dealing with here right now. The top one is 500 Pandora. So we have one operation, 2 buildings on 2 separate roll numbers. As
So
you
are
can,
we dealing with the one with the red mark or the one?
the one on the bottom,
Below it.
I'm just showing
Yep.
the example of this, because what happens is in the mailer process, these buildings are connected, and even though there's conflicting information on the mailers, they're one of the same. They're one operation on 2 separate roll numbers. So if you look at the mailer that we sent out for the subject property at 615 Kernahan, it matches the roll number that we have at 0900992200, but the mailing address is 500 Pandora. But bear in mind, it's one economic unit. It's a egg manufacturing. So you'll see on page 3 where we send the mailer, and it's based on what the property owners have asked us to do. So you'll see on page 4, the top page of the mailer for 2017, there is the certified mail that was sent to 500 Pandora, being consistent with what they've asked us to do. So the property address is 615, it's 500 Pandora. Then what we've done here, so that's on page 2. Then what we also have here is on page 5, we have proof of delivery. The person who sent us this, her name is Anne Desiderio on the mailer. And here we have the Lincoln file for Anne, what Anne does. Anne is the administrative assistant,
What
order
grade
desk.
is
Oh,
that?
this is subsequent.
Oh, okay, well, you can just read it then.
Well, frankly, that should have been contained within the assessor's evidence.
Well, her name's listed there, it's subsequent information here, I don't see,
Okay.
it's about credibility.
Whatever, if it comes into question as to whether she's actually an employee of the company, we'll be able to.
Okay. Fair enough.
You want to pass the note, Mr. Chairman?
No, well, then, it'll be you.
Okay, no problem.
Unless it's questioned.
So, on page 5, bottom of page 5, you can see that it's sent out to 615 Kernahan. This is the 2017, this is the initial one. So, the one that you saw on page 3 was the second income expense mailer that we had that required the registered letter. As you can see, the LP 578 is on top, which matches LP 578 on the bottom part of page 4 on the top half of the envelope.
And I note that the statements themselves have 615 Kernahan Avenue on the top.
Well, see, because
Statement.
so the mailer goes up to 615 Kernahan, but the mailing address is the mailing address is 500 Pandora.
I see that.
So, yeah.
But there's no confusion on the mailing, on the
No,
income
yeah,
statement.
no, because we do what they ask us to do. On page 5 it shows where the signature is. Bottom of page 5 shows the second letter that we sent out. on April 12th, 2018. On top of page 6, you see the top part of the income expense mailer. And then what you see here is on the bottom of page 6 is you see the 2015 mailer and tracking report that we send out. Notice that we've been consistent in our information. They ask us to send it to 500 Pandora, we send it to 500 Pandora. It's one economic unit. Once again, the tracking number of the 491 matches the tracking number on top of the letterhead.
Do you get a response for 500 Pandora then?
No, we do not.
Okay. I was gonna ask if it's all contained on 500 Pandora, that kinda,
Well, the point is, the 500 Pandora is on appeal on February 3rd. And so there was some preliminary discussions with regards to case management, but the decision was made to move forward with this right now. Page 7 shows the top part of the tracking letter, which matches the bottom part of page 6. Notice on page 7 that the same person is signing the information for the income and expense mailer, so there should be no question with regards to them receiving them, considering she's been an employee with the organization since August of 2014. And that concludes my formal presentation with regards to non-compliance.
okay, questions on the non-compliance? First of all, are you contesting?
Well, I have a couple of questions for the assessor prior to making a determination on that.
Actually, I actually have some other information here. I do have my colleague's brief for the February 3rd docket, and it also shows the letter
Okay,
that was sent out as well.
that's new evidence, so.
Well, but the history states they haven't filled out a mailer since 2009.
All right. So your questions,
So if I understand you correctly, you are seeking the non-compliance penalty in this case because of a non-response to the request for information with respect to 2017.
That is correct.
And the previous requests would have been dealt with in previous assessment cycles, correct?
That is correct. I can't speak about other people have done in the past.
And the information that you show on your page 7, so it's pages 6 and 7, that was sent out in respect of the 2015 mailer, correct?
That is correct.
And you're not seeking it here because of that, but rather the 2017?
Well, this is a brand new hearing. We're dealing with the 2020 roll and the 27. I have no control over what other people have done in the past.
And so let me ask you again, you're seeking it here because of the 2017 and not because of the 2015 mailer?
well, that would be
Well,
obvious.
that would be a brand new
2015 mailer is
It's
not
just like if a
relevant to
previous,
this hearing.
it's just like if a previous agent settled out a certain value and your value happened to be different. Are you to say?
We might go a little faster if you, well, it's not trying to anticipate where I'm going with this, I was just asking the question. And those are my questions, thank you.
Okay, any questions from the panel?
Nothing, thanks. Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I already asked the question and I had still quite a response. There was one response for both properties combined, but you can proceed then.
Thank you. I don't know how many of you will be aware, but where there is evidence in respect of the for this cycle, where there's evidence of a properly delivered and proof of service, we don't oppose the request, and so being consistent with that, we do not oppose the assessor's request for 54.3.2 in this case.
Okay. I guess there's no need for the panel to confer then on that, so you can proceed.
So what we're talking about here is property, and the assessor's already described it, 615 Carnahan. He's quite correct in that it's adjoining buildings. What I will add to his comments is that it actually covers 3 separate roll numbers. The buildings are connected, it's one operation. In fact, excuse me. The operation or the business in here is Winnipeg Farms. They do eggs. If you go to Sobeys, for example, you'll see their eggs in the egg cooler. They also do a large number of other egg products. I have personally inspected this property, both the entire property, for previous appeals. It's an interesting operation. One example of the product they produce is what they call egg in a bag. So they process the eggs and they do what they do to it, and they ship it out to hotels. Hotels drop it in the hot water, and that's where your scrambled eggs come from at a buffet in a hotel. So one of the products they do. The original structure was built in 1973 with a plan area of 35,200 square feet and a gross floor area of 40,299 square feet. That is, of the total gross floor area of 68,511, that is roughly approaching 2/3 of the gross floor area built in 1973. There was an addition in 2010, relatively small addition with a planned gross floor area of 2,849 square feet, just 17-foot wall height, and then in 2018 there was an additional 26,120 square feet of plan area added with a 33-foot wall height. So if we take excuse me, bless you. This has been bugging me for a couple of days now. So if we take a look at page 4, that is an overhead shot of the property. You can see an outline of the site in blue, and you'll see just to the above or to the north of the subject has the red dot. You'll see the second roll number I was talking about, and then the third roll number is immediately adjacent to the north of that at 500 Pandora. And so you can see now with the building that is, or the building area that is on this site, there are issues with respect to land to plan ratio. You'll see some setback there from HOCA with respect to the building. They end up ultimately now with a land to building or a land to plan area of 1.98, so that's sub 2. That's inadequate in terms of modern industrial expectations. They get away with it here because their loading is in large part on the adjacent floor. Took a look at some rental comparables. We show those on page 7. They are of a range of ages. I was looking for a range of age and size. In this case, we have a total of 66,419 square feet of leasable area. We show a rental range there. I do note that the city has applied a model rent of 6.25 square foot. Based on these rental comparables, the age and the configuration, I think $6 is probably more accurately reflecting of what the market would actually pay for this space. We also took a look on page 8 at the Johnson report. This property is located in Transcona. Excuse me. So if we turn to page 10. Bless you. Sorry, that's coughing. You'll see there that I have at the top of page 10 included a table which encompasses both owner-occupied and tenant-occupied or investment type properties, and their vacancy rates for the last 10 years. And for Transcona, including owner-occupied, the Johnson reports say that the vacancy rate is 8.6%. And you can see there below, if we look at the investment vacancy rates for Transcona, you'll see they are significantly elevated. What we read from this is that Transcona, as an area, struggles in comparison with the overall market in Winnipeg in general. It is in large part older stock properties that are there, typically legacy. You don't see a lot of new construction going on in Transcona industrial areas. Having said all of that, on page 11, we've stabilized our vacancy and collection loss at 6% in this case. That is significantly lower than the Johnson report indicates for the Transcona area. In page 12, there is no disagreement with respect to shortfall. We have already covered in many previous hearings the non-recovered expense study. Nothing I've seen would lead me to conclude anything other than a 7% allowance based on our study. The department has applied a 7% cap rate in this case. Here we have more than 50% of the gross floor area built in 1973. We also have a very low land to building ratio, sub 2 to 1, and so based on that, and based on our industrial capitalization rate study, we've applied 7.25%. Excuse me. We go through the mathematics on page 13, and we seek a reduction to $4,599,000 based on all of that. I do show a better picture on page 16. You can see there the pre-expansion and the post-expansion of the site, and you can see how the land area or the available land area has effectively disappeared. Page 17 gives you a better idea if you turn it landscape. That gives you a better idea of the three rolls, the bottom red dot being 615 Kernahan, the middle roll number, which I don't know why it still exists, and then the top property at the corner of Pandora and Hoka is actually 500, 500 Pandora. We also show confirmation of our physical structures and the ages that we suggested they were at on our page 18. And with that, I am open for questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Flynn?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, did you say that 2/3 of the building was built in 1973?
It said 40,000 square feet, and I just eyeballed the calculation. It's certainly more than half.
But on page 18, you're showing 35,200.
On page 18?
Yes, of your brief.
That's quite correct. But
So if you go
page-
35,000?
Hang on. So what page 18 shows is only the plan area. It does not include upper area or mezzanine space. And so when you look at page 20, that will tell you what those spaces are. And so what we said on page 3 was that there was a gross floor area. And I did the reverse mathematics. So some of it is, if I understand correctly, 2-story, some of it is mezzanine. If I did the calculations correctly, I believe that the gross floor area of the 1973 construction is 40,299. Of the total, 68,511.
Okay. How come you don't have any pictures of the brief, of the comparables of the subject property you visited recently? So how come you don't have any?
So hang on a second, you referred to comparables and then you
No,
referred.
pardon me. How come you don't have any pictures of the subject property in your brief?
In my brief,
Yeah.
they weren't included.
Okay.
But I'm telling you on my oath that I have previously inspected this, pre-expansion.
Okay.
I have inspected the entire property.
Okay. So are you saying that the majority of the buildings has a 1972 infrastructure finish in terms of
No,
quality?
because, It's different because they're doing food, egg handling in there and feed products. They have the capacity pre-expansion to handle 1 million eggs a day. And so there are, like, presumably related to health codes and health regulations, there are, I don't want to call them clean rooms, but they're very cautious about moving from area to area. You have to walk through those little trays of liquid to sanitize your boots and so forth. But the structure itself is what it is.
And do a lot of trucks come to the plant every day to pick up goods and services like eggs?
Trucks?
Yeah.
I presume both delivery and pickup.
Okay.
For sure.
And so if land to building ratio was so significant, why would they done such a significant expansion?
Because they have the north building in conjunction with it. But as a standalone site, if we're talking about this property, it's not ever been merged. If we're talking about this property standalone, that's the land building ratio. And when you look at the loading facilities to it,
So you have to go physically outside to go to the other building, or is it one
it's all
operator?
one.
So chances are, if it's sold on the marketplace, it's sold as one economic unit, would it not be?
What we are here today valuing is this roll number.
Okay. Which is in conjunction with,
What we are here valuing separately is this roll number. A separate hearing, as you already indicated, is being held on February 3rd for the adjacent property.
and is the Transcona Industrial Park a really large market or a really small market for industrial use properties?
So I don't have that information in the excerpts that I have here today.
Okay. Yeah.
Having said that, from 30 plus years of experience, I can tell you that it is smaller certainly than some areas in the city, but I can also tell you that in terms of new construction, not additions, but in terms of brand new construction in Transcona area, it's not happening.
But isn't the Transcona space for industrial park actually quite limited? Because it essentially just consists of Pandora and a bit of region. There's not really much else in Transcona for industrial properties. There's CN, there's Flyer, there's the Palace or Pandora, but other than that one strip, it's not a large industrial park by no means.
Pandora's not Palliser anymore, it hasn't been.
Yeah, I understand that, but it was,
I would agree with you that the scope of the area is limited. But really, when you talk about Pandora and it abuts to the bus and railroad tracks and Doolittle Road and just to the south of that.
But that's St. Boniface.
St. Boniface Industrial Park, which is also dying, if you will. They've now converted much of those lands to multi-res and housing. Certainly in Transcona, the indications to me, based on what's going on in this area, nothing new is being built there.
because there's no availability,
There's
there's no
no
space.
demand.
There's no space.
Okay. Well, nothing, so let me say it again, nothing's being built there because there's no demand.
Okay. And so, what's the cause of this huge vacancy rate in Transcona with regard to these properties? Like, is there,
I'm not the one who did the study, so, and I didn't explain it, but dating back to the 90s, and we've subscribed since the 90s, it was once upon a time prepared by a chap by the name of Ken Croach. That was subsequently taken over and is now published by Wayne Johnson. It does an independent survey and tracks it annually, publishes twice a year, once in June, once in December each year. And it does a very thorough survey of the market for industrial, for retail, for offices, even for vacant lands to a lesser extent. But his survey is quite comprehensive and it's independent. And that's why we subscribe. I know the department subscribes as well. They just don't seem to apply it in their modeling. But certainly as an independent publication, it is something from experience that I think accurately reflects the market transactions and experiences.
are there 3 large spaces that are part of the study done in Transcona that affect the huge vacancy amount in Transcona?
three large spaces.
that are vacated, that are causing the reason why the vacancy rate is so high in Transcona.
Well, so let me just take you to, I'm going to include owner occupieds when I'm referring you here. If we could go to page 10. And going back 10 years, the vacancy rate, including owner occupied properties, has never gone below 5% for Transcona.
Okay.
So if it's being impacted by, I don't know what you've suggested, 2 or 3 properties, that's certainly not evidenced by that sustained high vacancy rate, including owner occupied. And when you look at investment properties, it is much, much higher, and again, significantly elevated, certainly from 2013 on.
So, so you're not as familiar with the vacancy at 1001 Regent, 1201 Regent, and 770 Pandora, which would impact the vacancy
So
study that you're
let's-
referencing?
One at a time, 1001 Regent.
Yeah.
I believe I did that property on a field cycle, and it is substantially vacant, that's correct.
And 1201 Regent,
Is actually occupied.
but they have a significant amount of space that's vacated, according to the Johnson report. It's over 100,000 square feet of vacant space there.
Well, I've inspected that property. One of the structures is in fact underutilized. Their main production is hence related to dealers' parts. There are separate discrete structures on that site, and one of them does suffer from underutilization, and I couldn't tell you if it was 100,000 square feet off the top of my head.
And in your analysis, you didn't reference the capital commercial real estate vacancy report or the Collier's report?
Well, quite frankly, having looked at that previously, that actually supports our contention. When you look at the southeast vacancy rate.
Yeah, but Transcona is northeast. It's north.
So, having looked at it, I can tell you, and because I've seen it before, that information actually tends to support what we're saying here. And much of it, certainly the following pages with Cushman Wakefield, actually just parrot the Johnson report.
Well, the Cushman, okay, but there's a difference in the capital real estate group, northeast, is anything parallel to the Red
Okay,
River.
so that isn't in our evidence, and I have relied on the Johnson report.
Okay. No further, no further questions.
Okay, Richard, any questions?
No, I have none.
Kent, any questions?
Question, page 2, is this actual picture of the property, page 2? Page 2. It's the actual.
Yeah, that's actually on Hoka.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see there some of the loading facilities, and as you look at the overhead, on page 4, you can see there where the truck loading docks are actually north of this property on the adjacent sites. So you'll see the tanks there, and you'll
Yes.
see the tanks there, and then you'll see, so that's part of a separate roll, the skinny roll, I'll call it. And then north of that again is the larger roll of 500. So the loading, this portion of the loading bays, loading docks are on the adjacent properties.
Okay.
And that's how they get away with it on this site, but as a standalone.
Have there been any renovations to the actual building since it was built? Has there been any renovations, major changes to it?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
The actual building?
Yes.
This unit, specifically, has there been any major renovations to
To
it?
suit their uses, so there are some, I'll call them breakdown coolers inside. You'll see them in sometimes in warehouses where it's like Lego building, they bring it in, they put up the cooler. They have that because they're handling eggs.
Okay.
And I'm stretching my memory here because it's a number of years since I've been in there. Any renovations that have been made to the site have been made arising from the business operations that are in there. They haven't affected the physical structure, if you will. I believe that there is also in There is some, I don't want to call it refrigerator because they have their own coolers, but there are some areas that are temperature controlled, and I can't recall off the top of my head if they are here or if they are in the separate production area in the north building. I don't recall because I went through the whole thing all at once. So,
Thank you.
This was asked before, but I just want to confirm. This is basically, the buildings aren't divided, are they?
no, it's walked through everything, and frankly, the middle roll, I have in the past asked for it to be removed, and the board has never saw fit to do that. I have no idea why this building remains on three separate homeowners.
Probably because the owner hasn't asked for consolidation.
You know, let me now ask the city to merge the rolls. Mr. Froelich is appearing here as the city assessor, and so we are making that request.
Yeah, if you could send me something ready, that'd be appreciated. Then I can forward it to the appropriate parties.
That makes sense if it's one economic operation, so it's not severable on its own.
I don't think we have a value on it, do we, Brad?
Well, you have a value on the middle roll.
Do we?
That's
What is it?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't aware.
And there is a separate value for the north roll, the larger one at 500. But the problem, and I'm not gonna call it a problem, but the city, once you add in the north building, you're well north of 100,000 square feet, which then affects the rental rate.
That's what is going to be my next question.
And
Once you get economies
I
of
haven't
scale.
done that here. I have actually compared it to similarly sized units, which is why I've come up with the $6 a square foot. As a much larger building, the rental rate will drop from there. It is de facto a single occupant property covering three rolls.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Wouldn't it make sense just to roll it all into one? All three of them into one?
Aha, yes. That's what I asked.
Okay.
That certainly seems to be the logical thing
Yeah.
to do. Given it's one economic operation, you couldn't sell this at 615 Carnahan separately without,
Technically, according to the city, and that's why we're here today, you can. But if we are considering that we can't, then we need to consider the scope of the additional building areas. And my opinion, rental rate would drop from the $6 I have proposed here. And the size of the entire structure may additionally affect the cap rate as a single occupant.
okay, those are my questions, so you can proceed, Mr.
Just to clarify, so we already know the roll value for this property is $5,577,000. I will start off on page 8. I did actually have some rebuttal information here with regards to this, and the important consideration of when we're looking at this property is that 630 Carnahan is a brand new building. As we go through the pictures here, even though the effective age was first started in 1972, we'll go through the pictures here on page 8. Page 8 shows some pictures of the building that we have here.
So let me just slow you down there. Subject property is 615 Carnahan, not 630 Carnahan.
Yes, I understand that.
The address you're showing at the top here is 630 Carnahan.
The property, my brief says 615 Carnahan.
I'm looking at your page 8.
Okay. No, that's fine, that was an error.
So you're quite certain that these are pictures of the subject property?
Well, if you look at page 9, there's signage of the owner of this building. So I'm very certain that this is the building.
Okay, proceed with your presentation.
So page 8 and 9 are pictures of the building per se. Page 10 also shows the same. So on page 11, I have a general overview of the industrial park area of 615 Carnahan, where it's located at the corner of Carnahan and Hoka. And then you can see in 2018, the picture that we're looking at is what the operation looks like right now. So what we have here on the bottom portion here is where the new building was built, plain and simple. And on the top of page 12, you can see where the new building was built and where the old building was. What we've done here is on 550 Pandora Avenue West, it shows the subsequent building that's to the north of the subject property. And on page 13, it shows how they are connected with one another. All the permits, and I have this information here, all the permits for this building, and I should include it in a rebuttal, and I did not, so I'll just read off of it, is that there's a series of permits that have taken place starting in 2008 with regards to the permit value, one being here at $3 million. And I'm just going to make sure that I have it. And then the permit value here was $15 million. That was on, the first one was dated in 2008. The second one is dated in 2016. And I have a third one dated in 2017 for $400,000. And then I have detailed information that shows what happens here with regards to the breakdown of space. On page 14, we are now looking at the production areas. As you can see, this area is immaculately clean, it's climate controlled. So when we're looking at rents for this property, even though I haven't included it here, but Mr. Boardroom made a great point. In this type of building, similar to the Boeing building, which is a large building as well, that rent is around $6.53 that we have for that property. It's not a part of my evidence because it's a big property, but we've discussed that rent in the past. Page 15 shows some of the operations that take place in the building here, shows some boxes, storage area, good lighting. Page 16 shows the storage area and some of the mechanical areas. As you can tell by the infrastructure here, it's not a 1972 building. It looks nice, new and modern. Page 17 shows the loading areas as well. The truck is clean, organized. So our income workup. So what we've done here is for the subject property. We have, we've used $6.25 net rent, have a vacancy loss of 2.5%. We have expenses at 2%. We have excluded the 5% fee with regards, which is called as being management. This is an owner-occupied property. A lot of the information in Altus's report with regards to operation expenses in terms of tenant improvements and incentives not to be included. We use shortfall of 375, come up with a cap rate of 7%, comes up with a property value of $5,777,000. What I've done here for rents is I've included some market rents here. The effective age that we have for this property is 1992. And I got some market rents here that range from $5 to $12.42. I do have the information with regards to the $12.42 with regards to Camille Road that was built in 2007, and I do have the mailer here. And which is why I feel our market rent is actually quite fair. What we have here for capitalization rates is that we show a range showing what sort of cap rates we've used. And with regards to the non-recoverable studies, we have all the information here that we've all seen on many occasions, but I do have it for your review. Cap rates. So what has Altus had here for cap rates on page 22 is they're showing a range from 6.5 to 7.87. The 7.87 is the part of the slate portfolio, which has gone under much debate under many hearings already. So all their cap rates that they've listed here are under 7%, if they're asking for 7.25%. Page 23 shows our cap rate analysis and our recovery information. And that concludes my formal presentation.
Okay, questions, Mr. Boardroom?
I do have just a few. I want to clarify some of your exterior photos, so to take you back to page 8. Now, at the top, it says 630 Kernahan, and you said that was an error, so what should that read?
Well, the subject property is 615. But what I've also done here for purposes here that I've included the pictures with regards to my non-compliance, I want to show that this is one economic unit. And so with regards to if there was any issues with regards to the non-compliance issue. So I showed pictures of the entire building.
Of the entire building, and so let's come back to page 8. In the top picture, what is that a picture of?
Looks like office building.
I understand that. Are you suggesting that that is 615 Kernahan?
What I've done here is how I looked at it when I was looking at the pictures here. When I look at page 11, I see stacking towers. And so, page 11, so to me, in my eyes, where you have this office jet out on the top portion of the building, so I'm referencing page 11, gentlemen. Ladies.
It's right, top picture, bottom.
Bottom picture of page 11. So what I've tried to do is notice how this entire office area combines actually all three roll numbers. So what I've done here is I've taken a portion of that, and then I got a stack right beside it here on the top page of page 8. And then I got 3 stacks underneath. So it sort of looks like 3 stacks underneath here on the bottom of page 11. So that's where I got the picture from.
So to be clear, as we look at the top picture on page 8, the very left-hand structure would be the northern portion of this site?
Yes, it would
So
be.
that would actually be 500 Pandora, right? On the very
No, the very top would be, then you've got the middle section, which is,
Stop for a moment. In the picture at the top of page 8, the very left-hand side of that picture, that's 500 Pandora, is it not?
it has all 3 roll numbers.
All 3 roll numbers.
All 3 roll numbers. Because on page 11 shows that.
Okay. Now on your page 10, at the top, you see a little jut out. Would it be fair to say that that is again 500 Pandora?
Yep, and the reason why,
And just to be clear, because it's not labeled, that is not the subject property, right?
yes, it's not, because I clearly explained why I showed all the pictures of the subject property in my argument.
I'm just trying to keep it clear. And the picture at the bottom of page 10, is that 500 Pandora or is that 615 Kernahan?
It's both.
It's both. Okay, so as we look at the picture on page 10 at the bottom, and you see a yellow sort of structure there with blue stripes, is that, which building is that?
Well, the yellow one is 500, the one on Pandora. And the newer construction one is 615 Kernahan.
So you're telling me that the yellow building is 500 Pandora?
That's how it looks like.
Okay. And then you'll recall immediately adjacent to that is what I'll call the narrow roll, and that's the structure and where the truck trailers are to the left of the bottom picture on page 10?
Yeah.
Okay. So as we look at that, none of the bottom picture is of the subject property.
And
That's that's a question, I'm sorry. So isn't it true?
did I not answer that, why I included all the pictures
I
of the
understand
building?
what you feel. I'm just trying to be clear in my mind which pictures are of
And
the
I
subject
provided an
property.
answer with regards to why I provided all the pictures.
But you'll agree with me that the picture on the bottom of page 10 does not want to show.
We're going around the circle here. We'll agree that's 500.
Mr. Boardroom, we have the
So let's
whole
move
afternoon
on.
here.
Fair enough. Now, you are here defending the model income for this property,
Yes, I am.
and that would include a model vacancy rate.
Yes.
And in fact, the only vacancy rate evidence you have is what appears on page 16.
Page 16 is pictures.
Sorry, page 19. I got funny eyes. Page 19.
It's model generator vacancy.
Yes.
I'm showing the Capital Real Estate Group here showing Northeast at 3% and a 2.1%.
So let me back you up again to the question. On page 19, the 2.5% vacancy lost was the only evidence within your brief with respect to vacancy rate, correct?
But I have subsequent data to support our position with regards to vacancy. I'm under oath.
Right. And so within your brief that was submitted to the board, that is the only evidence you have, correct?
That is correct.
And the cap rate is model generated?
That is correct.
Just as an observation on page 22, if you're going to reproduce published materials, it would be appropriate to either source them or to copy the entire page, recognizing our logo at the top, just for future reference,
Okay. It's just,
as an observation.
well, it does have all discrete concludes in the middle of it in the paragraph here, so I felt that would be redundant.
Your rental comparables that you show on page 20, 560 Camille Sis, is that the FedEx building?
Yes, it is.
You're aware that that was built to suit?
Yes.
And you're aware that as arising from that built to suit, there was an extended lease put in place? Do you know if that's the escalated lease?
That is what we have from the 2017 bid that was sent out to us.
At 1242 a square foot, you're aware that that property sold, right?
No, is it post-reference? It's so recently?
Oh, no. Okay, and that's fine. And 630 Kernahan, the rent you're showing there arises from the information that was provided to you?
Well, it was not from the 2017 income mailer, so, but subsequently we've changed that.
Okay, and who is the tenant in there?
I think it is Collier World, just let me double check, what do I have here? Colorado.
One 122 Paquin is who?
Pardon me?
Who is that 122 Paquin?
Oh. You know, there's a reason why I blocked it out, but it's, you know, yeah. You know, I said the address, you can look it up.
Well, we don't necessarily have information, and I'm entitled to query whether or not it's an arm's length lease.
Well, for privacy concerns, we were told not to block out information, so that's why we have been doing it in our briefs. I'm sure if you Google it, you can probably find it. You did have 2 weeks to review the brief ahead of time.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Okay. Richard, any,
No, nothing, thank you.
Kent, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're really dealing with what, I mean, the difference between $6 and 6 1/4 rent and 7 1/4 cap and 7% cap are really kind of splitting hairs. They're not totally out of the ballpark with each other.
You know what? Because there's negotiations with the other property, we want to make this go away, but unfortunately, we could not come to agreement to value, so that's why we're here.
Yeah. and certainly agree with that one economic unit should be on one roll of lumber. Especially when they're not severable independently. Thank you.
I think what happens is, because I think CN has partnership or something like that, and because I don't know if I remember that or not, but
Was that a CN right away?
I think so, and that's why we haven't been able to do it.
Okay.
I think that's the reason why, you know,
So then they are in fact separated. That's the case.
All right. Thank you. Reviewing the property. Okay. 601 Bowman, which I understand is another request for non-qual. So can you read in the information and then
Yep.
go on to the non-qual?
yep, file number is 192244, roll number is 02040257-300. We have the assessed value for this property at $4,157,000, and this valuation is based on land. On page 5, we're going to show the history of, so ironically enough, we do have the 2018 mailer for the very first time. But if you look in 2017, no income expense mailer, 2015, no income expense mailer, and you can see that under IE support. We did end up getting the 2015 mailer eventually. The 2013 income expense mailer, we did not get. And the 2011 income expense mailer, we did not get, even though our process remains the same and consistent. And at the very bottom, we also sent out the 2009 income expense mailer, and we did not get anything. Top page 6 shows the address that we have listed here for this subject property. They asked us to send it to 55 Royal Park Crescent, which is what we do. This shows the second letter that was sent out with the tracking number LP578. On the top of page 8, you can see, the LP578, which is the registered letter where it was sent out to. And subsequently, the person who did sign it on page 8. Page 9 shows the original 2017 income and expense mailer that we sent out. Also sent out to 55 Royal Park Crescent. Page 10 shows, the version of the original 2017 income and expense mailer that we sent out. Page 11 shows our sort of summary page of 601 Bowman. Shows the number company, which is 888 Venture Corp Incorporated. Ask us to send all their tax bills to 55 Royal Park Crescent. On the bottom of page 11 shows, the property assessment notice where, the agent got authorization to get them to appeal their assessed value of the taxes. So there is documentation here showing that we are consistent. And finally on page 18, we're showing the 2018 school tax bills, which was sent out with regard to the amount owing.
Page 18?
Page 12, sorry, 2018 appeal. We're also showing the sale that had taken place in August of 2001 for $1.2 million. Page 13 shows the 2015 income and expense mailers that we also send out. On the, let me see, on the bottom of page 13, you'll see the LP 491, I believe, for 2000, was sent out on June 3rd, 2016, which matches the top of page 14, which is LP 391. And here you got a clear signature of the 2014 mailer of the property owner who signed it. I guess as final notes, and we'll end up leaving this in Mr. Boardroom's brief, is that there is income and expense information available, but they don't send it to us for whatever reasons, or they've been sporadic in sending it to us, so, which is why we're asking for non-compliance. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on the non-compliance?
No, and consistent with the previous property, we have here what appears to me to be an acknowledgement or a certified mail with a receipt signed for with respect to the 2017 questionnaire, so we don't oppose the request.
Okay. All right, so then you can proceed on the value.
So the first place I'm going to start is on page 22 of our brief. That will show you how the city has, this is the income summary for 2020, how the city has assessed this property to come up with 4 million.
Which page do you want?
22. So second from the back. $4,157,000. There are some pictures attached here. I did not do this inspection. This dates back to 2010. And so they are included in here for your reference. This is, let me just take you to page 4. This is not the finest example of an industrial property that you'll come across. What has happened here is that the surrounding neighborhood, the residential in the neighborhood, has grown around it, and so it is part of a small, or at the end of a small pocket. This is an irregularly shaped site, and we show that. I thought we showed that. I guess we don't. Bear with me. So the site is in fact irregularly shaped. I want to turn you to page 3. Construction on this site started in 1912. In 1912, 65,216 square feet were built for the 16-foot wall height. It's too old and too low a wall height for industrial modern standards. And you can see there, as we go through the chart, there are a number of additions and subsequent structures over the years. The wall height, generally speaking, other than the 22-foot section of 6,291 square feet, is substandard in terms of industrial requirements today. Go through some other descriptions. You can see on page 4 there is an overhead sort of oblique view, and you can see there the different structures, multi-tenanted. This site has access from Bowman Avenue only on the streets, or you can get to it on Raleigh Street. However, that requires access from or over a property separately held. This owner doesn't own the property that you gotta drive across to get into it from Raleigh. So the truck traffic, by and large, has to come in through Bowman Avenue, and you'll see that on, maybe we won't. You'll see that on page 18, the bottom picture there. That's as you're standing at, as I understand it, at the entrance on Bowman, looking into the property. And as you go through the pictures, and I'll leave you to it, you can see there that they are various ages, various wall heights. It's a real hodgepodge. So this property has in fact been leased out to tenants. They are all on a gross basis. We do not have a rental available to us. And so we took the approach of taking a look at the income and expense statements. We show a summary of that on page 7. We have attached financials at the rear of our brief. And so we go through an exercise of looking at the revenues and taking a look at the expenses and stabilizing them. You can see there that we have stabilized the expenses at a total of $349,746. That's lower than any of the 3 years that we're looking at, leading up to the reference date, and a net operating income significantly higher than leading up to the reference date for the 3 years. Because the revenues automatically include vacancy or automatically recognize vacant space in there, that adjustment is already incorporated, similar with shortfall and non-recovered. The department modeling has come up with 8.5% on this one. Given the age, the location, the low wall height, the construction, our suggestion is a 9.5% cap rate based on all of that. And so we go through the mathematics on page 9, and we're looking for a reduction to $1,329,000, and tell you that there was a recommendation made by the city in respect of the 2018 appeal on this property, reducing the assessment from $2,499,000 down to $2,209,000. Again, that was a recommendation made by the city at the previous hearing.
So was that second number, please?
This was reduced to $2,209,000.
Thank you.
So I'm not quite sure. There's a, I'm certainly happy to ask Mr. Foley about it, but there's a process whereby if assessments increase, they curve everything on a bell curve. And if it falls outside of a particular range, they're supposed to do a desktop review. I don't know how you go from 2.2 million to whatever it is now, to 4,157,000 without having somebody actually having looked at the property. Now, are they punishing the guy because he didn't submit his IMEs? I don't know. But it's pretty clear that the desktop review was not done on this property, particularly in light of the previous recommendation reducing it. So with that, I am open for questions.
Okay, questions?
Mr. Berkshire, did I not make a recommendation on this property to you?
Well, all negotiations are without prejudice.
Yeah, but
frankly,
for you to bring it up as a question, I think,
But-
tremendous insult to this.
But frankly, your number was nowhere close to what it needs to be or should be properly.
Well, we're not going to be talking about recommendations or anything like that. And also, I think any question of bad faith on the city is not appropriate for this hearing, so.
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply bad faith on their part. What I was suggesting is that a desktop review didn't happen as required by a double agency.
Which is why I made a recommendation for the subject property, which
Well,
wasn't
that's
$3
fine,
million.
that's
No, but it's-
fine. We're not going to take anything from that, so go on with your question.
Okay. So, Mr. Borgstrom, you're asking for $1,329,000 for this property?
Based on the income that it's producing for the 3 years, 15, 16, and 17, leading up to the reassessment, that's our valuation.
And what did the property sell for in 2001?
Well, that's not within our evidence, but a 2001 sale, I wouldn't place any weight on.
No. So prices haven't gone up generally since 2001 to 2018?
That wouldn't be the only factor that I would be considering, but I still rely on a sale dating back to 2001.
So let me confirm with you with regards to issues of access. Where's your overhead pictures of this property?
I have the obliques on page 4.
Okay. Yeah, because, but it doesn't show that there's a back lane that's.
There actually isn't, that's a separate rule number, owned by a separate party, not these owners.
Okay. And is there any access
Off
through?
of Bowman.
off of Raleigh as well?
Only, as I indicated, only across a separately owned property.
Okay. And so, in your non-recoverable information, you're asking for, I'm referencing page 20 on your brief.
Okay, page 20 of
Yeah.
the brief? Okay.
Okay. Do we include interest and bank charges and long-term debt as a part of that income, or should that be added on?
Well, page 20 of our brief is the physical characteristics of the property.
Oh, I have page 20 here on the income and expense mailer.
You have page 20, 21.
Oh, my goodness, okay.
Maybe a page.
My apologies.
2, page
Yeah.
19.
Okay, those,
Hang on, sorry.
can you put the financial statements here?
Okay, thank you. Let me just look. Quite right.
Okay.
So, as you look at the sum, so to answer your question, I don't, and let me just show you why. And so when we take a look at page 7, we don't include interest charges, but in the normal operation of any property, there might well be bank charges. For example, if you have a business checking account, those are the types of things that you would absolutely remove.
Okay. And so,
And so it's, you know, out of an income of $476,000, $1,046 for bank charges is a nominal amount. It's not a mortgage amount.
okay. Well, yeah, it's just, yeah, but we never had none of your data that you provided on page 7 has been given to us as.
I understand that, and we have now provided it, and my client will be penalized for not having provided that data.
You know, just to make the no other questions.
Okay, Richard, any questions?
And I may have asleep at the wheel here, but would you please walk me through how you came to that NOI? You
So-
don't offer a rent, a specific rent?
No, and so on page 7, because I don't have a rental available.
Yep.
So on page 7, what I've done is I've taken the revenues for this property, and this is this property only under this ownership. And you'll see there on page 7, you'll see that there that we set out 3 years. We show the average, and we show how I've typo spelled it, stabilize it.
May I interrupt you then?
Sure.
You're taking that number from these unaudited statements, 2017, 2016, okay? I got that
Okay,
clear.
and so as we go through them, there are a number of expenses that we excluded necessarily, so just looking at one of the page numbers 22 with the financial statements on it. The first page 22, if
Yes,
you will.
yep.
So we have excluded vehicle, we have excluded amortization. We have excluded interest on long-term debt. We have excluded meals and entertainment. Bless you.
Sorry, thank you.
So those are examples of the types of expenses that we would exclude, and what we have put within our table here, or chart here, are what I would consider to be normalized expenses.
Okay. And coming up with that bottom line.
Yes. So in terms of a real estate valuation, if you're standing there as a purchaser and you're trying to figure out what this property is generating, and you've got the financial statements, that's what you'd be considering. To have a vehicle in there, I mean, it's a business expense you can write off with the CRA, but it's not something other than hotel operation. It's not something that we would allow in this type of business or this type of ownership.
Okay, so you're going by the statements that you were provided?
That's the,
unaudited
yeah, that's the
by-
information we have.
Okay. And yet this owner refuses or somehow did not submit those to the.
Yeah, I can tell you that this chap, and we deal with him, they have fairly extensive holdings under a number of different company names. They own the McLaren, as one example. They own, there's a Shell station on St. Mary's, there's a Shell station on Fauquier, so they have a number of different holdings, all under different corporate names. And I can tell you that they have, in the past, had issues responding. They have now turned everything over to their accountant to respond. So I think going forward, we're not gonna see this issue anymore. But yeah, it's not the only property of theirs that I've had this issue with.
Okay.
Which is exactly why we can propose it.
Thanks for the answer.
Yeah.
No further questions.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Sure, on page 4, which building are we talking about here? You see a few pictures.
Yeah.
I apologize, I can't see the, how do you say, join the picture 2, I'm trying to figure which actual building.
Okay, so if I might approach, and
Please
if
do.
I can borrow your highlighter.
Sure,
Probably
yes, please.
and perhaps Mr. Fuller can join me in.
I think my brief shows the area pretty good though.
Yeah,
But-
thank you.
So,
Thank you.
this is, so here. Oops.
Okay, so it's
And then
this.
similarly, yeah, and then similarly, and then there's a little jog here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yeah. As I said, it's irregularly configured. So it includes a number of structures on there.
They say 9 buildings, 52 premises.
Well, some of them will be additions, and so, I don't go by premises, I just go by physical characteristics of the property.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, on your pages 20 and 22,
Which ones?
the financial statements. What are commissions?
That would be related to the leasing up of space.
So those will be leasing commissions?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and did you include those under?
We did.
All right,
They are as we, and we clearly set that out on page 7, as we do with our non-recoverable expense study, they are, and you can see from this property, they are an expense related to the ordinary day-to-day ownership and operation of every property. Some years will be more, some years will be less.
okay. Thank you for that, that was my only question. So you can proceed.
Yeah, for sure. I actually made a recommendation to this property.
So again,
Well,
Which
this,
is
all this, all
if he's
discussions.
making a
It was on my
recommendation,
brief.
Okay.
if you're making a recommendation, then make a recommendation.
It was on my brief though.
Yep, that's fine.
And so, and the reason why we went through this process is because without income and expense bearing information, this property is a hodgepodge. It's really messy, it's really unorganized. You don't have mailers, it's built over many different years since the original building was 1912. So in my eyes, this building's almost at the end of its economic life. And my evaluation process didn't include any comparable market rents because there's nothing comparable to this. So and because it's at the end of its economic life, and with regards to a large parcel of land that's in a desirable, within the, it's not in the suburban location, it's within the city of Winnipeg. To me, the highest and best use for this property is as residential land. And so what I've done here is I've come up with a value and I got some comparables here because there are no comparables in the marketplace for this property. There really isn't. So what I've done here is that, roughly speaking, and I'm just giving you an overview, is that I used an $8 rent, which included the cost of demolition. And then we'll look at my subject property brief later on. Page 2 shows the entrance area for this property on Bowman. And in hindsight, and because of time, I probably should have tried to get access to it from the other way from Google Maps, but this is what we have. This is the entrance to the building. As you can see here, there's a lot of different units. They're like sort of like the original self-contained storage units that you see off Rindiers or that you see off St. Anne's and the perimeter. Because lots of garages, lots of storage, just based on what I've seen. Many of my colleagues have been in this building before, and it's not a pleasant experience for valuation purposes. So on page 4, what we have here, so on top of page 4 shows the access to it. And so what we have here is, it's, as you can see here on the top right-hand side, where the picture is, over here. And then on the bottom side of it, because it's 601, so the bottom side is 601 with the multiple buildings here. I do believe, and I may be wrong here, if this is City of Winnipeg property, on the bottom of page 4, you'll see the row of houses, and you'll see what, to me, it seems like a back lane. And I'm not too sure if there's access to the subject property via the back lane. But I think potentially there could be access there. Obviously, there's the access on Bowman, which I was able to get. And then if you look on the right-hand side, you have this parcel way here, and there seems to be access on the right-hand side here, on the bottom right-hand side. I didn't check to see who owns that parcel of land. It may be, you know what, if you're looking at the top of page 9, maybe I think at one point there were, I can't speculate. It's just, it's sort of unique how this parcel of land here, beside the subject property, is there, but. Railway, yeah, yeah. And so, to me, there may be access off Raleigh. I am now moving forward to page 15 of my brief. So what we have here, I've done 2 things here, but bear in mind here. So this is the income statement for this property with the variety of rents. These rents are higher than what they're actually getting. And this is what we have here, which is why I want to make a recommendation to avoid this process altogether. But what we have here is, I think our blended rate, as Mr. Boardroom has stated, is 281. You know, using the potential rent vacancy, we have a net effective income of 353,333 at 8.5%, comes up with a value of 4,157,000. What I have here is I have some comparables just for the purpose of having comparables, but the point is, it's just, there's no other property like this, so I just did this as an exercise here. So what I've done here, and I do apologize to Mr. Boardroom because I didn't provide any maps or pictures. Could I hand this out now, Brad?
No, I'm okay without it.
Okay. No?
I'm good without it.
Okay. So what I've done, usually when we do land comparables and whatnot, I show maps. You know what I mean? But the point is, due to time constraints, what I did is I did a macro perspective of residential, of land sales in the northeast quadrant of the city of Winnipeg. So what I have here, and I could reference them, because some of them have replotted, and I got our GS person to do this for us, but I have a map here for your review, but Mr. Boardroom doesn't want to have it. So what we've done here is, I have the first part of top of page 18 shows, and bear in mind here.
Mary, to be clear, I'm not objecting to it introducing, I just don't need it. I'm not objecting to you showing it.
Oh, okay.
But it's,
Okay.
I don't need it.
Okay, well, okay, sorry, I just assumed that, okay. So if we look at the bottom chart on page 18, which is the first one, which is 1425 Wilson, that's the first map that I have here.
Where is the subject property on here?
The subject property, you know, in hindsight, it would be on Raleigh, on Layton. It would actually probably be just south of Kimberley. Notice where it says Kimberley? You know, it would have been just to the south here. Would be probably right where it says Gateway, or see, one side says Raleigh, one side says Gateway. I'm guessing it's gonna be right here, gentlemen. And right on the bottom
In
there,
that corner?
yeah.
So that would be Gateway then, huh?
So it goes one side's Gateway, the other side's Raleigh here, right?
Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
that's where, right?
Yeah, there's a change, right?
Yeah. So what I've done here is picking homes, and I realize there's not a lot of 400,000 square foot parcels of land to be developed in East Kildonan, especially in a dense inner city part of the city. So what I've done is I've shown some comparables here of what we have here on 1425 Molson. Then I got another property on River East, which is just north of Chief Pegulas on top of comparable number 2. I got some other properties on Florentino, and I got another property here. So for this one, we have a rent of $14.37. The ranges and sizes go from 26,000 square feet to 59,000 square feet. Some of these sales are a bit dated from the subject property. Second page is from list number 1, and these are sort of larger properties in the northeast quadrant. There's one that's 27,000, but the largest one that we have, which was in 2012, which is comparable number 1 on Regent Avenue, it's at 2696. But that's just that's on Regent Avenue, high traffic density area. I'm not advocating for that, but it just shows the range of what we have here. We have some properties on Pegulas which are a bit smaller at $16. So, looking at our values, I feel, I don't think I'm being unrealistic in the evaluation here.
Mr. Chair, while we're in the maps, may I
Yeah.
ask a question about the maps?
Sure thing.
Okay.
The use of all of these properties is similar to the subject?
Yeah, because my valuation is on vacant land. So all these parcels here sold as vacant land
These are all-
for future development.
Thank you, that
So,
wasn't clear.
And part of my process here is, as I go through this exercise, is just what's the valuation of it? Because the property is at the end of its economic life, we don't have any mailers to utilize. It's impossible. So I felt that this approach was correct. So page 2 is from the one up on top here. This one is number 3, and the final one is number 2. Just showing a range, of properties, and I just, it shows a property sale on Bowman at 2,948 square feet. That's so small, but it's just indicative of just some of the information that we have here. So when we look at this and we look at what is the highest and best use for this property, right? Our valuation was $4 million was too high. It didn't go through the review process. So what I did is I looked at this property and says, this little industrial park area, which is between Raleigh and Watt Street, between Bowman and sort of Kimberley here. It's very small. Is there potential for infill housing there? And what surprises me is that we have infill housing, or we have apartment blocks being built on Pembina Highway behind a bank and a Burger King. And then on Dougal and Plessy's Road, which is essentially an industrial park, and this is the part of information that I forgot to provide, is that they built multifamily homes in an industrial park. And a lot of them have sold. And then the question is that land contaminated? I checked the subject property here at 601 Bowman. It's not contaminated. And then what I did is I actually looked at the closest comparables on Dougal Road to where this new housing development occurred. One of them is directly across the street at 2049 Dougal, and the other one is further east on 2400 Dougal, which is on the same size. None of those had contaminated issues, so the potential for development here is huge, which is why I felt using an $8 rent all-in was quite fair and reasonable for this approach to value. That concludes my formal presentation.
Okay, any questions, Ben?
Oh, yes. Now, if I understand your approach here, you have abandoned the income approach, and are applying a residual land value to the underlying lands net of demolition costs, correct?
That is correct.
And so let us take a look at your page 18. Subject has M1 zoning, is that correct?
That is correct.
And residential, as you've indicated, you suggested that residential would be one of the likely uses of these lands?
That is correct.
And M1 zoning does not permit residential development, is that correct?
Yeah, but similar to the Dougal property where they ended up building homes there, I'm sure if a developer was looking at the potential of building infill homes or a subdivision, I think there are the potentials for that to occur.
The Dougal Road that you're referring to is part of the former St. Boniface Industrial Park lands.
That is correct.
And in fact, the industrial market was so weak, the city sold those off for residential development.
That is correct.
Now, all of your comparables are zoned commercial,
That is correct.
and in fact, and we'll go through them one by one, but in fact, most of them have been acquired by adjacent owners, correct?
Some of them have been, yes.
Okay, so let's take a look, and I'm gonna go, they're all numbered sequentially, kind of, and so I'm gonna start with the top table on page 18. And your first two comparables, number 1 and 2, at 1459 region and 1439 region, those were acquired by Manitoba Lottery, did they not?
That is correct.
And Club Regent is right there, correct?
That is correct.
Would you not expect the adjoining landowner to pay a premium price for that location?
Yeah, but if you look at comparable at
No, I'm asking
1328,
you, we'll get.
let me, I'm answering your question here,
Let
Mr.
him
Bergstrom.
answer the question.
So if you look at the parcel at 1328, which is not purchased by Manitoba Lotteries, it sold for $29.21 on November 6th, 2013. So to me, that shows me an indication of market value as well.
And we'll get there, but in terms of your numbers 1 and 2, you'll agree with me that Club Regent has a shortage of land in that location, correct?
Yes,
And you'll agree with me that there would be a motivation on their part to pay a premium to acquire those lands, correct?
not necessarily because the provincial government wants to do what's in their best interest as a corporation, and why the comparables support the value
Well, and
that
we'll
we're
stay
stating
one
here.
at a
And,
time.
and let's also look at the fact that those sales that had taken place are 6 years or 5.5 years away from the reference date.
1496 Regent, that's part of the Pattison Group's auto dealership.
That is correct.
And in fact, those were lands that they acquired to merge and adjoin with their existing dealership.
That is correct.
Again, an adjoining landowner.
Yeah.
Okay. 1328 Plessis. That was actually a multi-sale, was it not?
We had it as an individual sale.
As an individual sale. So let me just take you down to the second table in your comparables, number 3 and 4, and you'll see there 808 Regent, 1328 Plessis, same sale date, right, and those lands are right at the corner of Plessis and Regent.
Yep,
They are abutting a car dealership and Canada Inns, correct?
that is correct.
Do you know if either of those landowners bought that?
I provided this information here as a general overview of the market conditions, and my sales price per square foot is nowhere near that.
If you don't know, that's fine, but my question was whether or not they were acquired by the adjoining landowners.
I do not know.
2106 Degrees, that is now developed with multi-res apartments, correct?
2106 degrees, yes it is.
And in fact, that's at the corner of roughly Headmaster and Degrees.
Yep.
Yeah. So you show some comparables on Peguis, and those are located actually directly behind the Costco in Peguis, correct?
That is correct.
And they've been now also developed, there's a lot of residential development going on in that area, isn't there?
Tons.
And so there is in fact a, now multifamily development on those sites,
Lots of them.
on those two sites.
Yep.
So if we take a look at the bottom ones, again, 1439, that's your number 2 above, in your above table, correct? So that's a repeat, yes?
Yep.
And similarly, your comparable number 2 in the middle table is number 3 in the top table, so we've already, that's another duplicate, yes?
Yep.
And 808 Regent, 1328 Plessis, we've already talked about, that's a multi-sale, correct? And you don't know who bought it?
Just because it's a multi-sale doesn't mean that it's an open market transaction with divorce.
And this property on Bowman, you're not suggesting that that is in any way comparable to the subject matter?
No, I just put it there for information, and my value per square foot is nowhere near that.
So let's take a look at your bottom table then. And these are multifamily lands, correct?
Yep.
And the one at 1425 Molson is now a developed with multifamily residential?
Yep.
Yes?
Yep.
Your comparables 3, 4, and 5, and you just refer to your first page in the maps you handed out, right?
Yep.
And so the bottom ones, 3, 4, and 5, that's in the third table, right?
That is correct.
So do you see there all the development around there? Those are all brand-new, single-family homes, correct?
Yep.
And that particular lot, Fiorentino actually fronts on a lake, does it not?
You know, there's a lake there, but the point is, they're not really housing lots if they're land size of 59,000, 48,000, and 47,000 square feet.
Okay, so let's now come back to your, apologies, I'm looking for your overhead map here. So if we take a look at your page 4, I'm just looking at the top picture, can you identify any structure in that entire area within this picture that has seen any redevelopment with multi-res or single-res in the last 50 years?
Well, there's not availability of land because there's a huge concentration of homes, but there is housing developments that have taken place on Henderson Highway.
Which is further north.
Which is, and directly to the west of the subject property.
Now, the subject property is actually.
And actually, well, and there is infill homes that have been built on, down Gateway.
The one-offs.
Yeah, the one else, yeah.
Okay.
And there's actually, and then what's also interesting is that they've taken an old bus loop with the city of Winnipeg on the corner of Donwood and Raleigh.
That's nowhere close to the subject, right?
Well, it's actually 2 kilometers from the subject property.
I'd say it's more than, I used to live on Knowles, so.
Well,
Donwood is all close.
It's, let's do the math here. So the subject properties on Monroe, the major streets that go through there are Kimberly, McLeod, and Springfield. That's not very far.
Subject property is on Bowman, south of Washington. That's not Monroe, right?
South of Washington, yes.
I'm just looking at your
Yep.
page 4.
Yeah, it's of similar distance to my other comparables,
Okay.
okay? And so let me finish. So that parcel, which was the old city of Winnipeg bus loop, they developed it into 3 single-family dwellings, and that sold for $18 a square foot. So, just saying, it's on my evidence, but I know that for a fact and I'm under oath.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay. Subject property is actually located in the Chalmers neighborhood, correct?
Yes.
And as you reviewed the land sales and came to the determination that its highest and best use was other than its current use. There's a process that you have to go through to get there, isn't there? And that would include an analysis of the market, yes. That would include feasibility studies, correct? In terms of the Chalmers neighborhood, did you do, so the city, every census publishes neighborhood community growth plans, right? Did you have a chance to review that?
No, I did not.
Do you know the ages of the properties in this neighborhood?
Oh, very old, 1920s.
Do you know the income ranges for the occupants of these properties?
You know what, the family household income is not the highest in this neighborhood compared to other areas of the city.
And so it'd be safe to say then that this is an area that would not attract high-end tenancies, correct?
No, but it would probably attract, you know, but it is a valuable parcel of land, and it would probably attract regional housing.
And any development for multi-res would necessarily need to support high rents to support the construction costs, correct? And those incomes are not the occupants of the neighborhood right now, right?
Well, you know, there's a variety of homes being built, multi-family homes being built in the city. There's a desire for infill housing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, is there anything more
Did-
to add on?
Did you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to review crime statistics in the Chalmers neighborhood?
There are crime issues all across the city of Winnipeg. Some are higher, some are lower than others.
And how would you characterize Chalmers?
On the higher range.
Those are my questions, and I do have some rebuttal evidence for you.
Okay, any questions from the panel? Richard?
Yes. So if I understand your approach, you decided to abandon the income approach
That is correct.
and you moved to land value.
That is correct.
Now, is this a going concern business?
A going concern business, as in.
It's operating.
It's operating, it's
revenue,
functioning, yes it is, yeah.
Yep. There's no indication anywhere that you have that this business is going to close down. It's been in operation since 1912, apparently.
Yep.
And you have no indication unless you know something that we don't know.
No, I don't know anything, but, you know, when we look at other properties with regards to, you know, highest and best use for properties, it's just that because this property is so hard to analyze, because I was motivated to not even having to hear this property, and I was forced to, I'm under circumstances here where I'm just trying to come up with a value which sort of makes sense. And so, because without any mailers, we can't do any analysis.
That was difficult.
It's difficult. All of our colleagues who have gone there, it's a dog's breakfast in terms of valuation and trying to get information. It's old, it's dated. And, you know, the bottom line is that when we look at land value prices or what it sold for in 2001, it was $1.2 billion. In 17 years, full years, you know, the property has gone up in value. And,
But how's it if it's a dog's breakfast? If it's run down, it's 19.
which is why I sort of looked at it and said, what is the highest and best use? You know, I don't know, it's impossible for me to value this property. And
So arbitrary decision on your part.
it is.
Okay.
I knew our assessment was too high.
Okay, let me get to that.
Yeah, but I knew our assessment was too high.
Yeah.
There's a history of 15 ones that have taken place for this property with other tax agents where the values have been 2.2
Now I'm
million.
going to object because 15 ones are not to be brought in at either board by agreement as between Altus and the assessment department.
There are 4 years of 15 ones being done for this property.
Leave that,
Okay.
please, and let me come back to the income approach.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at your run-up of numbers on pages
Yeah.
15, 16. And I'm curious now. You're going to tell me, I would imagine, that the model created all of these numbers because you had nothing else to go on, correct?
Yeah, and so, and.
And then you
but-
got, just
but-
let me
yeah.
carry on there. And then you got to the bottom line and you looked at it, said, wow, 353 NOI. I put a cap on that building for 1912. And I'm getting 4.1 million, way too high.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't force you to re-examine your rent, your square footage and rent, although it's the same as the applicant, so that makes sense. You wouldn't examine other variables coming through the income approach. You simply jump over to the land value.
Like I said, I sort of answered this question ahead of time, knowing the complications of this property. I didn't want to be spending, at least a half an hour, 45 minutes of my life discussing this,
A little bit
considering we have, 6 other properties on this docket. So I wanted to expedite this process.
Yeah.
And I was forced to.
You didn't do it.
What that?
There's
You
no,
didn't expedite it.
Well,
if
what am I supposed
I
to?
want to cut you off there,
I'm
there
s-
is no force in requiring to go to a hearing. There's nothing to be construed. You're forced to go to every property on this docket, you're forced to go to hearing.
But there's some of them that, when you have some properties that are more complicated than others and a negotiated settlement could be achieved, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean,
And I'm sure you would as well.
your proposed valuation, your recommendation is more than $1 million higher than the last value, so I can see
It's-
why that'd be
Well,
not accepted.
and the proposed value by the agents is $1 million less than what was settled last time around. Or what
Well,
the,
that's fine.
what the value was agreed upon last time.
So if I could just finish my.
Sorry.
So your income valuation is not defensible?
No.
By your own statement, by your own numbers, it's not defensible?
Definitely not.
That's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Kent?
I think any questions that you can answer.
Okay, sure. I have no questions, so
I
if you,
have 2 questions, actually, and I should have gotten to them earlier, I apologize, very briefly,
uh,
just really brief.
Well,
you have one chance
have
to
rebuttal.
cross-examine. Is it different?
It was related.
I don't care if it's related. You have a chance to cross-examine and you ask questions at that time. Those are the rights from the questions of the board.
Well, except that the assessor has indicated on his front page that he's come up with a land value accounting for demolition costs, and I wanted to.
Okay, but that, you could have answered that before.
So there was no reason for
Let's
not to
move
ask
on
that.
to
Yeah.
your rebuttal.
Fair enough.
You said you had rebuttal.
You're cutting me off from the questions?
Yes, because you rested your questions.
Certainly positive to consider at one point going forward.
Thanks so much.
Cross-examination is non-open. Saying you get one chance to cross-examine.
So I'm going to take you through this step by step. There is a number of documents within here. All of the pages have been numbered in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see there in bold black italicized numbering. And so page 4 is, I've included excerpts of the standard on verification of adjustment of sales. That's from the IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers. You'll see in the assessor's briefs that they refer to it, they subscribe to it. And then here on page 6, you recall that I questioned the assessor about the sales of properties to adjoining landowners. And there it says on page 6, under 5.8, sales in which the buyer already owns adjoining property should be examined carefully to determine whether or not the buyer possibly paid more or less than the property is worth on the open market. In some cases, because of the neighbor relationship, they may even receive a deal. These sales should not be excluded solely because the buyer adjoins the property unless one or the more following reasons exist. Buyer is willing to pay more than the asking price. I'm going to suggest that for the Pattison Group car dealership and certainly for the Club Region Casino and Mantle Lotteries, that's exactly the case. The buyer is under undue stimuli to purchase the adjoining property. We know that the casinos lease land from CN behind them. The assessor readily acknowledged that they have a shortage of land in that location. And so those sales, aside from not being industrial, are suspect they should be ignored. I have included this on page 7 starting, This is an excerpt from the appraisal of real estate, third Canadian edition. This is the 101 book that everybody goes through when they first start in a business. And there's a process that needs to be applied when you're considering the potential analysis for any given property. I have highlighted a large number of sections for you. I'm going to let you read through it on your own. But the gist of what is included in here is that you must do a proper analysis. That includes demand, the likelihood of development. If you recall, I asked the assessor about the Chalmers neighborhood, the type of housing in the area, the type of residents in the area, the crime statistics in the area. And the assessors already acknowledged that they're higher than average in this area. There is nothing in front of you that indicates that the assessor has gone through any of this process. Now, the other two things I'm going to include, we've included at page 37, is an overhead view. I have outlined in red the subject property. This is an area encompassing 4.2 square kilometers of the immediately surrounding area. You'll see directly north of the subject property are additional industrial properties. Directly south is Elmwood High School.
I'm sorry, which
Page 37.
37.
Yes, sorry.
That's not a problem, thank you. Read in it.
To the west of the property, that's Chalmers. A little bit to the south, a little bit to the north, that's the Chalmers neighborhood. That's the area we're talking about. Excuse me.
I see.
Nowhere on this map of 4.4 square kilometers is anything been developed in the last 50 years in terms of new multi-res. We've also included the previous or excerpts of the 2018 city brief before this board. You'll see there's the department's recommendation issued on the order on page 42. And on page 44, you'll see again an income approach applied to the subject property for 2016. Interestingly, the city applied very different cap rates for the previous two sites. I have included demolition costs. Now, I can tell you that I'm Marshall certified. I've also gone through the IAAO commercial workshop. So we can do a trip down to Tennessee. And there is a methodology to calculating demolition costs. I didn't get an opportunity to ask the question subsequently to the assessor. I can tell you for this property.
I'll take you up on that. You did have the opportunity, you didn't take it.
I said subsequently. And so the demolition costs, I can tell you, for this property are significant. And that's, any buildings built in 1912, I suspect automatically have asbestos. These costs exclude asbestos remediation. So there was a large component built in 2012. The demolition costs are upwards of $1 million for this site alone. And so I am open for questions on the rebuttal.
Questions on the rebuttal?
Did I choose one sale to establish market conditions for the subject
Well, that would
property?
be a good
Well,
question.
you're kind of
for you.
asking, he can't know what your mind
Okay.
is.
Yeah, it's, I have no questions.
Okay, Richard, any questions? Kent?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no questions, so we'll take a 10-minute break or 5 after 3. Thanks. Okay, we'll come back into session. We're going to 850 Marion Street. So, Mr. Bullock, you can proceed.
Yep, sure. The file number is 193648. Roll number is 0603019150. Assessed value that we have for this property is $6,438,000. 3 different buildings, effective years between 1981 and 1987. We have an effective age for this property of 1983. Wall heights vary between 11 and 22. We have a land area of 245,250. We have a leasable area of 87,093, and we've got a land to building ratio of 2.96. This isn't like a typical industrial warehouse, it's essentially an industrial strip mall. And on page 2, we got some pictures showing some examples of the buildings. There's multiple units there. Top of page 3 shows where it's located at. So it's located on Marion, between La Jamode and Archibald. And on the bottom of page 3, you can see the 3 distinct units there, and the parking, how it's located, like on page 3. These income and expense mailers are a bit of a challenge to read, so what I've done is I've actually provided paper copies for everyone. So, property shows that it's fully, that lease is in place here. Got the expenses, got the vacancy, it's all stated there. Some of the leases are older, some of them are more recent, but we got leases here from 1997, so on page 2, we got, some in 2017, some in 2008, some in 2007, 1999, so we've got some long-term tenants here. Page 6 shows our evaluation for this property. Shows a potential rent of $518,863, $595, which is the average rent, using a vacancy of 5%, expenses at 2%, shortfall of $375, works out to a value of $6,038,000. What I've done here is I've tried to show leases that are subject to the subject property. We have a range between $550 to $695, and our model rents are actually quite close to the actual rents being reported on the income expense mailer. That concludes my final presentation.
Okay, any questions?
I do have just a few. The subject property can be either considered in or close to old St. Boniface industrial.
Yeah, I guess how you look at it is anything that's east of La Jamode would be old, everything west would be new.
Or the other way around.
Yeah, west new, east, yeah.
West older.
Yeah, west older.
And so subject property is not in Terracon Industrial Park? Business Park?
Definitely not.
And it's not in St. Boniface Industrial Park, correct?
Yep.
And the rental comparables you show on your page 7 are located in both Terracon and in St. Boniface Industrial Park? Yes. And these are, the rental comparables you show on page 7 are contract rents?
On page 7?
Yes.
Page 7, no, these, well, yeah, contract rents, they're rents that we got from our income expense mailer.
But they're contract rents?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, you'd agree with me that Terracon Business Park is very different than the subject?
Yep.
And much newer, built in 2004?
Yeah. I don't think we're that much different on rents, Mr. Borgstrom.
I'm just asking you about this.
Okay, that's fine.
So, as we turn to your page 5, and I appreciate that you've handed out the additional pages, a little clearer All of these are also contract rents,
Yep.
and they're the rents that the landlord is legally entitled to receive and only that amount? Yes?
I only know what's been reported.
You agree with me that any purchaser would,
I'm listening.
you agree with me that any purchaser would similarly be bound to those leases?
They would be, but leases that are very old, you know, do not constitute market.
Okay, and which of these leases are old and not stepped?
Yeah, well, just because it's stepped doesn't necessarily mean it's market.
Okay, so which of these leases are old?
If I'm going on top of page 2, what happens?
In your handout?
In my handout, yeah. So I go 12A, which is listed as a net lease. It's 1833.33 times 12 divided by 4,000.
Sorry, which one?
12A,
Thank you.
which is Alcom, you know. So that lease is signed in 1996. It does not indicate a step-up lease, and it's at $5.49
Okay.
on the mailer. Let's go further down here. We've got another lease here signed in 2010, which is Omega Posture Systems. Sorry. Sixth. That lease there is at $5.75.
Okay, so let me just pause you there for a moment and have you refer to, not in particular order, so 5B,
5B.
yeah, sorry, 4B, 5/6/11B, 8B, and 9B. The calculation of those rents are $505 per square foot and $575 per square foot.
So 575B. Which one am I looking at?
So let's go through the numbers.
Yeah, thank you.
4B,
Bless you.
Vanville and Jones,
Yep,
that rent calculates out to $575.
yep.
And so that's a very similar rent to the ones that you said were older leases, right?
Yep.
And you see when those leases started?
Well, the Banville Jones one is 2007. The step-up lease at 574.
And we have different information.
Mr. Bergstrom, my
And-
question why you're asking these questions when we're actually very close to rents on the same value.
Well, let him answer.
Okay, no
He's entitled to
problem.
ask questions and cross-examination.
So if we take a look at the units 5 to 7B, 8B, and 9B, all of which are central display. You're not aware that those leases actually stepped up in 2017?
I'm just basing my information on what's been signed on the income expense mailer. There's no time for further evaluation.
Now, the city's model applied 7.25% for this structure.
That is correct.
And for reasons we've already talked about, 2% non-recoverable. Those are my questions on this property.
Kent, any questions? Okay, and none, so you can proceed.
I'll start at page 6. there in the table, the property, just to begin with, as of the reference date, had vacancy in excess of 10,000 square feet. I don't think it's chronic, and so we haven't adjusted. We still apply the 5% rate that we apply for St. Boniface. But to make note of it, we've had to assign rents. We do show where there are stepped-up rents. Most of them are current leases. I just want to point out that 4B, when it says stepped up, that's an error. When it says 9 July 05, similarly the one below, it obviously picked up a different field. We do show the lease start dates. These are stepped up leases or lease renewals, and that's what we report in our information. This is a long-term client. I have worked this property previously. So we have the ongoing information from the income and expense questionnaires, and we have available to us additional information, including looking at the previous rent rolls for this property. So based on all of that, we're suggesting 586. The city's a little bit higher than that. It actually makes a difference. Even that little bit on the rent makes a difference when you're talking about 82,000 square feet. No disagreement. We go through the same exercise in examining the vacancy. For the same reasons that I concluded the Transcona vacancy was what it should be. In this particular case, we've also applied 5%. We show that on page 10. No disagreement with shortfall. We believe that the non-recovered expense rate should be 7%. And based on the physical characteristics of the property, we have adapted or adopted the 7.25% capitalization rate. We go through the calculations on page 12, and we're looking for a reduction to $5,698,000. Actually, just for your reference, I have included within our information on page 20. We do show the lease information, and you can see there under the column step up that there are a number of things identified in there. So, with that, I am open for questions.
Questions?
Is this property on appeal for the municipal board in 2018?
I have no idea.
Okay. Do you know what the value was in 2018?
No idea.
So the only thing we're disputing is the rent of 10 cents and the 5%?
Well, we're suggesting that the non-recoverable should be 7%. So those would be the two differences here.
No other questions?
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Richard?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. I guess that's the western area, 27 moving.
Not Weston. St. James.
Thank you.
It's part of the road. It's actually west of Route 90.
All right. Look at road in there.
Immediately, that comes to mind, absolutely.
All right, you can proceed, Mr. Chairman.
File number is 193847. Roll number is 070925 00000. We have assessed value of $6,195,000. Properties were built between 1964 and 1987. There are some 1- and 2-story aspects of this building. We have wall heights between 12 feet and 20 feet. We have a land area of 578,337, a leasable area of 63,764, and it has a land to plan area of 9.35. As you can see on page 2 of the subject property, we have just some pictures of what it looks like. It looks like a decent building from outside. We have an effective age of 1970, but just by looking at the subject property, it does seem to have a newer finish or newer curb appeal than a 1970 building. I haven't inspected this building. Page 3 shows some additional pictures of some additional land here. And page 4 shows the overhead property for this. Where it's located at, so it's just west of King Edward on Logan Street. And the bottom of page 4 shows just the layout of the subject property per se. Page 5 shows the income expense mailer. The property owner has been compliant with regards to completing this. They list it as a net rent here, so they show all the calculations here. There's also a land lease, shows expenses here that take place. It shows a net operating income of $346,375 here. Notice how they say that tenant pays all the way through it. And if you look at that net operating income, and you look at on page 7 what our net operating income is, we have $349,964. So they're actually quite close in terms of value. What we have here is on page 6. So we have 2 separate companies that are related. So what they've done here is they've placed down some book rents that range from $5.52 to $6.49. And our blended rate for rent for this property is $5.94. I guess the tenant pays everything except for the maintenance and repairs that are listed there. Page 6. Page 7 shows the income calculation. So we have potential rent of $378,908. With the 3.5% vacancy, we got $365,646. Net operating income is a $349,964. We got a 7% capitalization rate to come up with a value of $4,999,486. We have additional land value of $1,196,000, and Mr. Boardroom and I have agreed to that value. And so what we have here, so in terms of comparable leases, so what I've done is I've taken leases, subject property 63,000, I've just taken some leases in the neighborhood, well, as best as I can. So we're showing a range of leases from $5.20 to $6.75. I also got some other leases that at 925 Keewatin, which is 31,000 square feet at $650.
Where is that in your evidence?
I'm reading it off my,
And so, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that would be new evidence.
well,
Comparable, comparable should be placed in your brief.
time constraints.
Well, yeah. Everybody's got time constraints.
Yep, I understand that. Well, bottom line is our model rent is $594, and it's within the range of what's been provided by the owner. And my comparables show similar range. On page 9, you could ignore this, but this is an example of some of the rents that we use to establish land values. And on page 10, for whatever reason, I guess I printed it twice, but there's the workup for the income expense mailer. What we have here is we're showing a range of cap rates that are between, for industrial properties, between 5.5 and 9.8. We're using 7%, which seems like a reasonable amount based on the cap rate studies that we've done. That concludes my formal presentation.
Any questions?
I do have a few. I want to be absolutely clear, because you referred to the tenant and the tenant paying and the rent reflecting such and such. So if we take a look at your page 6, you'll see there, and this is the response to the request for information sent out by the city, right? Yes?
Yep.
And you'll see there, they've made a very careful notation that all of the occupancy of this property, with the ownership being Catarath Realty, you'll see there that they made a notation that the landlord and tenant companies have common ownership, yes?
Did I not reference that in my presentation?
And so I just want to confirm with you that that is in fact not an arm's length lease.
That is correct.
And I want to confirm with you that you are not in any way relying on that rent.
Well, when there is rental information provided to us from income and expense mailers, we do follow up. And in circumstances, a question is asked sometimes, is what you've provided here on the income expense mailer being mindful that it is owner occupied? Is it mindful of market conditions or market rents? And they say, yes, it's within the range,
Where did they say that?
in my phone conversations with them.
You called them?
Sometimes I do, but we verify
Who
income
did
and
you-
expense mailers.
Who did you talk to?
Not for this property, but
Not for this property.
No, not for this property.
And so, let me come back to the question. This is not an arm's length lease, correct?
That is correct.
And so, again, to repeat, are you or are you not relying on this lease information?
The income and expense mailer information is similar to my comparables in terms of market rent, so I'm relying upon that.
Now, with respect to the information you show on page 7, it looks to me like the model has split out this development into two separate
Yep.
premises. And this property was built actually over a number of years, right?
Yep,
6 separate structures, correct?
that is correct.
And so do you know which buildings were applied to which premises?
So what we have here is for the height, for the 20,400 square feet, that one has a ceiling height of 20 feet, built in 1976.
And then all of the other building structures are within the 43,364?
That's what we have listed here, yes.
And that's good. And so of that 43,364 square feet for the first one, do you know how much of that was built in 1964?
Well, we have one building that was 18 feet wall height, that consists of 24,406. Then we have additional one, which is the office space, which is 5230, 5,320, I believe. Then we have additional space of 1440, which is 20 feet, which is 1976. And then we have a really small section here, which is only 240 square feet, which was built in 1980, and that's 14 feet high.
So fair to say, or would you agree, that of the 43,364 square feet, more than half was built in 1964?
That would be a fair assumption to make.
And would you also agree that of the 43,364 square feet, there is 1,440 square feet with 20-foot wall height, and the balance is 18 feet or less as a wall height?
That would be fair to say, well, just bear with me here for 1 sec here. Well, yeah, well, because only 20,460 and 1440 is, so essentially 22,000 square feet was built in 1976,
I was talking about the wall height.
which is 20 feet. So that would mean the remainder of the building. So we have 24,406 square feet, which is 18 feet high. And we have 5,320 at 12 feet. So what it boils down to is, like, we have an effective age of 1970, and without doing an inspection of the property, the finish of the subject property doesn't look like a 1970 building.
except that I was asking you about the wall height again.
Mr. Chairperson, did I not answer all the questions with regards to wall height? Like I've gone over it.
Now, in looking at your rental comparables on page 8, would it be fair to say that none of these are located in the St. James area?
Well, 3 of them are in the northwest quadrant, which is very close to the subject property.
And the northwest quadrant, according to the information you referred to, has a 6.1% vacancy rate.
We've used a 3.5% vacancy rate.
I understand that, but the information you verbally referred to, northwest quadrant shows 6.1%.
Yeah, but the Capital Real Estate Group shows the northwest quadrant of 3%.
So
Of
let's-
course,
Northwest quadrant. at
Okay,
six-
if this is not in evidence
Okay.
before the board, then
So let me come back.
question what's not
Let me
in
come back to
evidence.
the question. None of your rental comparables are in St. James, right?
they're in a reasonable distance to St. James.
Now, if I read your first page correctly, you're suggesting that this board confirm the assessed value because there's a pending municipal board appeal?
No, what I'm
That's what it
saying,
says.
I'm asking to confirm the assessed value because I felt that there was no reason for any discussions on this property because there was a pending municipal board.
And so again, let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. You are not suggesting, are you, that the board not consider this appeal?
We're evaluating it based on the evidence of this hearing and what occurred at the municipal board, whether they get it right or wrong, is not relevant to our consideration
Thank you.
today.
Those are my questions.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Page 7, page 10, these same pages?
You know what happens here is that they're exactly the same information. What happens is I like to format them a certain way, so I always show the pictures first. I always show the income statement and then I show the comparables. So I actually move things. So what you see on page 10 is exactly the same, it's just I forgot to delete it. Yep.
No problems, okay. Have you actually, this property,
I've never been there, no.
Sorry, are we looking at a different page 10?
No?
Okay.
No, page 10 and page 7 is the same, Brad.
Okay,
I-
sorry,
I-
yeah,
I made
I
two
misunderstood the
Yeah,
question.
I made it twice because I didn't delete it when I.
Yeah, and that's fair, thank you.
sorry. Thank you.
Richard, anything?
Just confirming we're agreed on the land value,
Yep,
given you're above the ratio of 4.0. Excess surplus land is in there,
yep,
and so it's just a matter of value.
that is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead with your presentation.
Now, you'll recall that I was trying to extract from the assessor the information on the wall height, but I'll go through it in my evidence on page 3. Property was constructed over time, 6 separate sections between 1964 and 1987. And as the assessor indicated, there was one very, very small 2-story addition in 1980. If you do the math, you have about 50% of this structure, or these structures built in 1964. So about half of it, 1964. You also have about 65% of the structure. So if we exclude building number 3, because the assessor has already identified that as is 5748 premise ID. Excuse me.
Bless you.
The remainder is all encompassed under the other, 43,364, and if you do the mathematics, more than 65% of that has wall height of 18 feet or less. You'll see there, as we described, 18 foot, 12 foot, 14 foot, 12 foot. So very low wall height. There is one section separated, 21,743 square feet. There are actually on this property, if we take a look at page 4, two main buildings that you can see, one on the west side, one on the east side. And again, there is a large amount of land that they actually utilized, and again, there is no disagreement with the contributory value of the additional lands in the amount of $1,196,000. We took a look at a number of rental comparables on page 7. There are, in our search, a range of ages because a large portion of this was built in 1964 and some newer. We had a wider range. We were looking in the range, or bracketing a range around 66,419 square feet, and you can see that in our chart on page 7. And you can see there the average and the median rent. Based on all of that, I believe that $5 a square foot would be an appropriate rent to apply to this property with its limitations. We took a look again, as we did with the other properties, at the vacancy rates, in particular from the Croach report. And you'll see on page 9 the vacancy rates, 8.7% for Winnipeg, for investment property, single tenant investment, 8.9 for St. James, 6.7 for multi-tenant, and 8.3 for the multi-tenant in St. James. That to me is an indication that St. James, generally speaking, is a little higher. And if we turn back to page 8, when we compare all of the space, including owner-occupied, it's still 4.5%. Why? And so I want to turn you to our, just very briefly, because I know we've seen it before, our capitalization rate study for industrial properties. And in there, we have included an analysis of the northwest quadrants. And I'm just going to very briefly go through it at page 5. That's going to be a table.
Here's no page.
So at page 5, and what I've done here is I've gone through an
There is no
analysis.
table, page 5. Goes from 4 to 6. to
Oh,
8.
there. What happened to double-sided? Okay.
For double-sided, that's even
That's bad. Okay, we've all seen it before. I've done a study in the northwest quadrant. There is a significant, if you look at the map on page 6, which I think you have in there, there is a significant amount of development going on out there. You can see the airport in relation to that, and you can see the subject property's location on Logan in relatively close proximity to all of that off of Route 90. That provides direct competition in terms of new development. First lots in there were sold in 2012. Water was late in coming, but it was certainly mid-2016. Water was available from the Westland Water Co-op, and so that has in part affected vacancy rates and competition in all of the northwest quadrant, particularly Inkster Industrial Park, and I would suggest it in the St. James area near the subject property. So missing every other page, I think that's the information I wanted to cover. But based on the Johnson report, we are applying a 6% vacancy rate to the St. James area. 4.5% includes owner-occupied spaces. That distorts it necessarily because they are 100% occupied. When we look at the 8.9 and 8.3 for investment, and it's something lower than that, we're applying 6%. No disagreement with shortfall, 7% non-recovered. The department has applied, I believe, a 7% cap rate in this case. Here we've got a significant portion of the property built in 1964. With all of its limitations, we've got relatively low wall height with all of its limitations. No benefit to the additional lands because we value those separately. And so I think that a 7.25% cap rate is warranted based on all of that. And we're looking for a reduction to $4,842,000 based on all of that. And I'm open for questions.
Take questions.
On page 8 of your brief, you're showing the vacancy history of St. James,
Yeah.
you know, from 2016-17 at 4.5%.
So let's be careful to understand that what we're looking at there. So if we look in the first paragraph below that, those statistics include owner-occupied properties, which by definition are 100% occupied.
Okay.
And so the vacancy rate becomes distorted.
Yeah, but they are full and they're fully occupied.
We're not generating zero rent, but we're not applying zero rent.
Well, you know, but there's evidence of what they believe is to be a full market rent at between
And
$5
so
and
when-
$6.
When we take a look, we are hypothetically here exposing the property for rent.
Yep.
And so we take a look on page 9 at the single tenant and multi-tenant investment properties, which are the rentals. And you can see there the vacancy rates that are in effect for those years. And you can see the effect actually, and in particular, when you look at the vacancy rates from 2015 on, where there is a fairly high trend in the single occupancy increasing, and that's arising, I think, from the competition coming on stream in the Arden of Rosser and other locations.
But the demand, they're building these because there's the demand there for them, is it not? So is there not high demand for industrial properties?
In Rosser,
Yes.
there's actually a competitive advantage because there's no business tax in Rosser. Some of the buildings have gone up on spec, and some of them are leased out. So it's a sort of a mixed bag.
But wouldn't there be disadvantages of being outside of the city limits?
Actually, no. You have a water supply piped in from the Westman Water Co-op. I'm not quite sure what the disadvantage would be.
Is there transit services there? Is there garbage pickup there? Is there other aspects of it?
Well, all industrial properties in the city of Winnipeg hire private contractors to pick up waste. Transit services, you're gonna find that industrial properties in general, the employees within those properties don't use transit, they will typically drive. to these
So there's no
locations.
bus service in the northwest quadrant of the city of Winnipeg for industrial properties?
Well, certainly for some of them will be in much closer proximity than others.
Yeah, but there is transit service that
I
goes.
don't consider transit services to be a significant factor in industrial property valuation.
You know, but in studies, isn't there, when I come across the web, they rate buildings with regards to access to public transportation or not? Have you not come across any of those
For industrial properties?
for industrial properties? Yeah, I noticed that. And what cap rate evidence do you have to support a 7.25%?
So we have separately filed our capitalization rate study.
Yeah. And so,
And so when I considered the amount of the physical structures being built in
Yeah.
1964,
Yeah.
when I considered the substandard wall height in a significant portion of the structures, I was of the view that a 7.25% cap rate was warranted.
and just bear with me here for 1 sec. No further questions?
Okay. Richard, any questions?
No questions.
Kent?
No questions.
All right, thank you for that.
We should take a quick recess and continue walking.
Okay. 5 minutes.
Yeah, not even that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sure.
We go to one, is it Bagan?
Yeah.
Megan,
File number is 19-22-17, roll number 06-0929-52700. We have assessed value at $5,978,000. We have 6 buildings in total. They vary in stories 1 to 2. They were built between 1987 to 2006. We have an effective age of 1990. Wall height ranges from 17 to 25 feet. We have a land area of 212,915. We have a leasable area of 74,450, and we have a land to building ratio of 3.07. Page 2 shows some pictures of the subject property. The top part's off of Dugald. The view off Dugald. Second picture is the view off of, the first one's the one off Big End, the second one's off Dugald. Picture number 3 shows just an overview of where it's located at. So it's in between Plessis and La Jamodier. And what's interesting on page 3 here is that this shows the layout of the subject property per se. But what happened is that they actually went through a significant expansion of this. I'm just trying to look here. And so what has happened is the last section was built in 2006, which added 14,400 square feet. And the reason why that's interesting is we talk about buildings and when they expand and when they don't expand and land to building ratios. Obviously, by them expanding it by 14,000 square feet says that land to building ratios wasn't as a significant issue for this property. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income and expense mailers on page 4. And what we have here for the subject property is we have a leasable area of 74,450, a rental rate of 556, vacancy of 2.5, expenses of 2%, shortfall of 375, to come up with a net operating income of 388,541. Using a 6.5% cap rate, we have a value of $5,978,000. What I've done here is I've shown some comparable properties that are within the range of the 556 that we have. So we got a renter on Paquin, built in 1991, 22 feet at $6.58. Got a property on Kernahan at 5, the Bates at 807, 1242 and 820. Feel quite comfortable with the rent that we've used here. For information purposes, the 1987 portion was 24 feet. 1993 was 14,000 square feet at 21 feet. 87 and 88 and 94, those areas are roughly just over 36,000 square feet. Those floor heights are 17 feet. And the 2006 edition at 14,400 is at 25 feet. Cap rate study shown on page 7. And what's interesting to note here with regards to the property here that we're looking at is we have an effective age of 1990 for our cap rate. We're using a cap rate of 6.5. And there's a property on the Bates which is very close to the subject property. This is on page number 8, cap rate number 1. The original age is 1980 to between 2001. Altus has used the effective age of 1990, slightly bigger than the subject property. And they've used a cap rate of 6.5% for the property there. And what we're looking at in terms of assessed value, $5,978,000. So we're looking at $80.30 a square foot, which is within the range of the sale price per square foot that's been used in the cap rate study. Thank you. That concludes our presentation.
Questions?
I do have a couple. In looking at your page 1,
Yeah.
and the gross floor area of 74,228 square feet,
Yes.
how can it be that the leasable area is greater than the gross floor area?
Well, if you look on the other side, there's some aspects of the building that are 2 stories.
Right, and all of that is incorporated, right? And so can you explain again, why a gross floor area would be less than a leasable area?
Well, if you're looking at page 2 on top there, there's windows, and it seems to be office space on the second floor there.
Right.
So I haven't inspected it. I haven't been in the building.
So, it's okay if the answer is I don't know. But it seems.
One of my colleagues would have entered this property into the role. They would have visualized the second floor space when they put it here. Let me see what I can file on records here.
Okay.
So,
Now,
well, let me finish, Brad. You asked the question here. Yeah. January 23rd, 2003. The building was originally constructed in 87. Building had a gross floor area of 23,450. 4,496 is office mezz, which answers why the plan area, the leasable area is higher than the plan area.
This question though was why the leasable area is higher than the gross floor area.
Okay. Because I thought he was referencing the leasable area. The plan area is 69,454.
and I asked you about the gross floor area.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, but if you do the math, if you go 74,450 minus 69,354 equals 5,096. So which is slightly higher than the notes that we have here. But there's probably some additional area here. Okay.
So you referenced the sale on debates not very far away from the subject, right?
That is correct.
But under page 9, the city has calculated that cap rate of 7.44%.
That is correct.
Okay, can we use 7.44 on this one?
You know what? I was following the information here. There's different assumptions that are made.
Okay. So I'll take that as a no. In terms of the 2.5, on page 5, in terms of the 2.5% vacancy loss,
Yeah,
that's model driven,
that is correct.
and that's the only evidence you have within your brief about vacancy.
That is correct.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Richard?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, proceed.
So I'm going to tell you that the differences in opinion here are vacancy, non-recoverable, and cap rate. So yes, we're using a different, or a lower area slightly. We're actually applying the gross floor area, but we are accepting the total amount of rent applied by the city for this property. So I do want to take you to page 3. And the property was actually built in 6 different segments, if you will, and you can see sort of on the bottom picture on page 3, you can see the sort of segments. The very right-hand structure, that's the 2-story office that the assessor was talking about. It faces Bagan, and the property is sort of L-shaped, and with access off of both Bagan and Debates. If you look at buildings 3, 4, and 5, all of those have 17-foot wall height. That's about 36,000 square feet, and that's about 1/2 of the building area with substandard wall height for modern industrial design. You can see the more modern industrial design with the 2006 expansion and the 25-foot wall height. That's more in line with what's expected, certainly recently. The other thing is that about 45,428 square feet, a little over 60% was built in 1987, 1988. So we've shown some obliques on page 4, and we'll skip across. We have provided the supporting documentation for the calculation of the building areas on our pages 16 and 19, I'm not gonna, 16, 17, and 19, I'm not gonna go over it. But the calculation of the gross floor area is exactly what the city is coming with. I don't know why the lease floor area is different. We took a look, as we have for the other properties today, at the St. Boniface industrial vacancy rate, as published in the Johnson report, that's the approach. I can tell you that the St. Boniface Industrial Park, and we've already referred to it today, a significant portion of those lands have now been turned into residential and multi-res properties running along Dugald and slightly south of Dugald as well. So there's no market for industrial properties, no development of industrial properties in this area. We took a look at the very specific owner-occupied inclusions on page 10, as well as the investment type properties on page 10. Based on all of that, I think 5% is the right rate. It's also what was applied on Marion, which is, it's not in St. Boniface Industrial Park, but it's St. Boniface. So we took a look at the capitalization rates based on the cap rate study. Again, about half the space with 17-foot wall height, about 60% of the space built in 87, 88. Based on our cap rate study, with all of the things that it has examined, I think that 7% is a more appropriate figure to apply. So we're looking for a reduction on page 13 based on all of that to $5,026,000. And I am open for questions.
Okay, questions?
So would they not build this property based on their operational needs?
That's a business decision.
But so if there was, because when I look at this, when we did the original building was built in 87.
Yeah,
And this,
and truthfully, I don't know that they owned it in 1987.
okay. But, okay. So, but if we're looking at it, you know, the 24 to 25 feet is a third of the standard, with the higher wall height, correct?
I'm sorry, a third of what?
The third of the building has a higher wall height area?
Well, we've got a gross floor area of 74,000, and so yeah, so we've got 24 feet and 25 feet, which means that we've got 2/3 of the area with lower than that substandard.
Okay. Would you say that the rents are a bit low for this type of building?
No, I took a look at the market and we have accepted the city's rents.
Okay. So, this property is owner occupied?
Yes.
Are there any leasing commissions or tenant incentives with this type of building?
And there's also zero rent applied.
Yeah. But in this situation, there's no book rent available, but there are book rents available of similar properties.
I wouldn't use a book rent in any event. And just to address, I think I'm going to address the question. We are hypothetically exposing this property to the market, and if it was released, as the model suggests it should be,
Yeah.
there will be operating expenses associated with that ownership and everyday operation of the building that are not recovered to the tenants.
But, which is why we've given the 2% as opposed to the 5%, the 7%.
Yes, and yearly they will go up and down. We've come up with, in our study, a much wider range of properties. We didn't look at a single year, we looked at 3 years in our study, and so I think our study is more transparent and more reliable.
No further questions.
Okay, Kent, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Richard?
No, no, thank you.
Okay. I have no questions, let me just make a note here. south end of McPhillips, 399 McPhillips.
Excuse me.
You can just see.
File number is 193268. Roll number is 1400320100. Address is 399 Grove Street. Assessed value that we have for this property is $5,850,000. I'll go through the rest of the subject property information, and then there is a recommendation that's on page 2. Property was built in 1979. There's 12 premises here. Average wall height for this building is 19 feet. We have a land area of 181,201. We have a leasable area of 67,358. The land to building ratio is 2.68. I've recommended a value here of $5,425,000 using our parameters in the 750 rent. So on page 2, you can see how I came up with my valuation.
And how do you feel about that recommendation?
Headed the right way, but we're not quite there.
Okay.
So using a 6% vacancy allowance, shortfall and other at 2%, coming up with a net operating income of $450,283. Using an 8.3% cap rate, we come up with a value of $5,425,000. On page 3, you can see some of the tenants there. You got a Pizza Hut there, you got a rental center, and also there's a U-Huts there. And on page 4, it just shows a general overview of where it's located at. So it's essentially you go underneath the underpass at the train tracks in Higgins and Main, and then you'll see it on the right-hand side. It's right across from the casino. And the bottom of page 4 shows more of a macro picture of the subject property. What we have here is we have just an overview, so they have been compliant with regards to income and expense mailers. Shows all the different aspects of it. Page 6 shows the rent roll. So what we have here is just showing all the rents of all the different properties. We have $6.50, $6.50, we have $9, $8.25. What I noticed here in 2009 is we got a couple older leases at $6.05 with the U-Huts. And my recommendations, actually, when I looked at the mailer, my recommendation was based on the rents that we had. Our rents were too high for this. Our model generator rent was $806, which is why I felt $750 was fair. And you could see, some of the leases are older at $6 and $5.75. You can also see some larger rents here at $5.75, $8, on $9 on the bottom portion of page 7. I also have some additional rents on page 8, just as an overview. On page 9 shows some of the leases that we have in place here that we've printed out, consistent with the information that I provided. And what we have here is, I won't reference page 10 just because of the fact that I've made a recommendation, which is a lower amount. Page 11 shows a series of rents that have taken place, all within the closest subject property. On Jarvis, we have rents there from $8 to $10. We've got some rents on Logan at $8.51. They're all smaller square footages, similar to the subject property. We're also showing a range from $8 to $12 there. Page 12 shows our cap rate study, as we're using an 8.3% cap rate to be reflective of the location of the neighborhood. That concludes my formal presentation.
Any questions?
I will pass, thank you.
Okay. Any
Brad, do you have to already go now at 4:30? Or 4:45?
You'll notice that I thought about it.
Kent, do you have any questions?
Have you visited this property?
I have.
Yeah.
I've been to U-Putts.
What's the condition? What's the
You,
condition?
you know, like, even in fairness here right now, if you look at our rent roll, so what ended up happening here is a part of my recommendation is that we have the Pizza Hut, the actuals for Pizza Hut's $9. And when I take a look at and clean this up, you know, I think our Pizza Hut one is at 11:30. So if you look on page 10, the library, we had that at 11:30, which is higher than the actuals, so that's why when I made my reduction in rents, you know, I felt comfortable with the $750 just because, you know, some of the rents are lower, some of the rents are higher. The U-Putts is almost like the tenant, you know, because the U-Putts takes a significant amount of space there, and a lot of that's at $575, which is, you know, not
That's,
reflective of all the other ones.
What's the physical condition?
It's well maintained. It's not like other properties there, you know, you had some major tenants, and even if you remember, before the U-Putts was there, that was a gym. Gold's Gym was there. So essentially Gold's Gym or Universal Gym replaced by U-Putts.
There was a bingo hall many years.
Oh, I remember, I used to work there, because so that's hilarious, I forgot about that. I went to junior high at Andrew Minarski, and I
It was,
remember working at that bingo hall, that's hilarious.
Smoking was compulsory there. apparently.
Oh, we used to sell Madonna tickets, I sure that
Not surprised.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Richard.
who was wondering, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Just one question.
Sorry.
I can't find anywhere where your new NOI is listed.
Yeah, on the second page.
Thank you. Oblivious to it.
No problem.
I will say that my one and only experience of accompanying my wife to bingo was here. And I was embarrassed by me with my 3 cards not being able to keep up with a little old lady playing 12 cards saying, come on, hurry up.
I can't even remember what the fundraiser was that we were doing for it. It must have been for a school basketball team or something. That's funny. I forgot completely about that.
Put out of the business by the casino. Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Bergson.
So, short and sweet, our differences here are rent and non-recoverables, and let me explain our approach here. So, we turn to page 7, and the assessor has already described the property as in good condition. So it's generating the rents that it can generate in this location. You'll see there that there are a couple of step-ups that we have noted on this property. The actual rents in place don't equal $7.50 a square foot as the assessor has recommended. They total up to $6.82 per square foot. That's the rent that the landlord is legally entitled to collect, the tenant is legally bound to pay, and that it would be binding on any purchaser of this property. Let me add to that the rent roll, and the assessor didn't mention it, but I am including it. There's a income from TELUS on this site in the amount of $18,000. We do include that in our analysis, and we have incorporated it in that. And so there's no disagreement on vacancy or shortfall. We still think 7% non-recoverable. No disagreement with respect to the 8.3% cap rate. You go through the mathematics on page 9, and you can see there, as you go down the column on the left-hand side, other income of $18,000. That's the TELUS income I have told you about. That's a gross rent, but we inserted it there. So the difference is in rent, and I've included the other income, and then the non-recoverable. So based on all of that, we're looking for a reduction to $4,902,000. And I think that's the information I wanted to cover.
Questions? Any questions, Mr. Flynn?
Yeah, I'm just sort of looking at this. So there's, in all the leases there's only 2 step-up leases in how many properties? How many different bids?
Well, we don't go by kids, we actually go by addresses.
Okay.
According to the rent roll, and you'll see there, the first 3 are Jesus is Lord. Jesus is Lord Church Canada, and then you'll see 415 to 419 is U Putz, and then there's the rest of them, so however many that works out to.
Okay. What sort of expenses are affiliated with, is it a satellite? Is it for, is it the $18,000, is that the tower?
I believe it's a tower, and when you look at the picture on page 4 at the bottom, it's a little hard to make out, but you'll see a picture near the center top, that's a tower.
Wouldn't that be separated under a separate capitalization? The cap rate?
Well,
Compared to the value for it?
You know, I've actually, we've had some discussion about that in our office, that's a very risky income stream to capitalize in perpetuity. Technologies change and you see things disappearing all the time.
Yeah.
ATMs as an example. And so, we have included the income, and we have, for the purposes of this hearing, capitalized it in perpetuity. But I agree, it's a riskier income stream.
Yeah. And what we've done in the past is we'll just do the cost approach to it. We haven't done it here.
And so, $18,000 at 8.5 cap is, I'm gonna suggest higher than the cost on it, just based on experience with other properties.
And we've matched our cap rate and everything stays the same. No other questions?
Okay, Richard, any questions?
Nothing, thanks.
Kent?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And welcome to council.
We came just in time for the last property.
Last property, I came just in time.
And there's the tag.
You should have come sooner for the last property. Oops.
340 South Road Crescent Marine Industrial Park. You can begin.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I had my information here correct. File number is 3971. Roll number is 0708-125-4300. Address is 340 Salto Crescent. And we have assessed value of $5,604,000. We have 2 buildings built in 1980, which is the effective age that we're using. We have wall heights between 20 and 24 feet. We have a land area of 187,233, and we have a leasable area of 62,917, with a land to plan ratio of 2.92. As you can see in pictures 2 and 3, this is an industrial strip mall. With various tenants listed here. And page 4 shows a general overview of where it's located at in the Marine Industrial Park. And at the bottom of page 4, you'll see the 2 buildings there that are separated. Property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out their income, expense, and other information. And what you see on page 7 is just an overview of the rents. But what is interesting is that on page 5, you'll notice that there are recoverables listed here for common areas, property tax recovery, and management on the top of page 5. So these are all net leases. So we have, the first one here is at $8.15. Next one at $7, one at $5.50, the other one at $6, and the last one's at $5.75. What we do have here, and then we have some additional ones on the next page. $6.50, $5.50, $6, $6 and $8.15. Our blended rent for this property, when you look at page 9, is we have 62,917 square feet. Potential rent is $416,700, and we have $6.62 a square foot. Our vacancy loss is 2.5%. We've got expenses at 2% shortfall, $375. We have a net operating income of $392. To come up with a 7% cap rate, we come up with a value of $5,603,000. Well, page 10 shows just a series of rents that we have for similar sized properties. Essentially what I've found here is that we have the actuals that we've used that I provided. And we've got a series of rents that are all just in the St. James area off King Edward. I wasn't able to find a lot, but that's probably more due to time constraints than anything else. But we've got a series of rents here between $6.25 and $9.09. We have the cap rate study located here on page 9. I guess in summary with regards to the subject property is that we have the 2.5% vacancy rate, and what I did is I referenced the Johnson report to look at what their vacancy rate is, because the Murray Industrial Park is different than St. James Industrial Park. And actually, according to the Johnson report, and I have it here for your viewing pleasure, is that there's actually no vacancy in Murray Industrial Park. So that concludes my final presentation.
Okay, questions?
The subject property is leased,
Yes.
and you're applying rents not from Murray Industrial Park, but from outside of Murray Industrial Park.
That is correct.
So in this location, why wouldn't you default to that ordinance?
There is a range, and that's what we have.
Well, there's always a range, and in fact, even in your rental
Yeah.
comparables.
Well, the point is with this subject property, I would have been prepared to make a recommendation, but the value that you're seeking was below, or just marginally above 2016, so I didn't feel that there was enough room to make a recommendation.
And this property has two separate and distinct structures on it, correct?
That is correct.
And would it be fair to say that they were both built in 1980, right?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that the larger of the two buildings has a 20-foot wall height?
Well, looking at it, yeah, I can't distinguish one from the other in between 20 and 24 feet, so it's hard for me to tell.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Any questions?
Have you actually visited this location?
Well, no, I have not.
Yeah. So, do you know the condition? Is there anything on file, or?
Nothing really on file, just, do I have anything for notes? No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. So, any questions?
Richard, any questions?
No, thanks.
Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Workman.
Okay, I'm just going to go over the information that the assessor couldn't clarify for us. And I'm going to take you to page 16 of our brief. And this shows you from the city records the plan areas. And you'll see there The first, or the upper building, number 1, has 48,000 square feet of plan area with 20-foot wall height. And the other structure has 16, it's a separate structure, 16,200 square feet, 24-foot wall height. In terms of page 18, we can actually see that building number 1 has 14,400 square feet of what the department has described or has assigned as mezzanine space. That means that with the mezzanine space, you have 14,400 square feet on mezzanine, but the space underneath that 14,400 square feet has 10-foot wall height, give or take. That's sufficient for that amount of space, which means that 33,600 remains at 20 feet. So we have a building there of its vintage, more than 35 years by now, which is not built in terms of modern standards. Certainly the 24-foot wall height one, there's no problem with that. The land to building ratio at 2.92 to 1 is a little on the skinny side, but it's not something for the purposes of this appeal that I got fussed up about. It's not approaching 2 to 1, at which point I would start to make some adjustments. Both structures, we show them on page 4, some obliques. Both structures built in 1980. And you can see the smaller structure there, that's the one with 24-foot wall height. And you'll see the larger structure at the top, that's the one with the 20-foot wall height. You see there at the front, there's some mezzanine development, fairly obvious from looking at it. I've already indicated that the subject property is leased, and we show those on page 7. I've already talked about leases and the obligations of tenants, landlords, and purchasers. All those leases add up to $6.23 a square foot, which is about 39 cents less than the city's model has generated for that property. I'm also going to tell you that the income and expense information includes additional revenue of $8,900, and we have again included that within our analysis. It shows actually as parking revenue, which to me is a little weird. Typically you don't see that in industrial properties, but it is what they're showing on their 17 questionnaire. They've incorporated it. In this case, the assessor is quite right that the Murray Industrial Park shows very little, and that's because the presence of rental properties in this area is essentially nil. It's all owner occupied. Very large properties, by and large, in this property. This is within the northwest quadrant, and it's influenced, as I've already talked about in our cap rate study, such as you've been provided. The development in the RM of Rosser, the additional competition, that all impacts this area as well. So we have adopted for this, in our particular brief here, the St. James vacancy rate, and for exactly the same reasons that I've gone over before. Inkster Industrial shows a very similar rate to St. James, and so we've applied 6% as a vacancy and collection loss for this property as well, being a tenanted property. Shortfall, no disagreement, non-recovered at 7%. As I've indicated, 20-foot wall height is skinny. We've also got the mezzanine development, which limits the wall height, clear ceiling height underneath that mezzanine space. So we've applied a 7.25% cap rate based partially on age and based partially on that. And so we are seeking a reduction to $4,654,000. And just on page 12, as we go down the list again, you'll see there the end of the column, sorry, and the row titled Other Income, you'll see there the $8,900 in other income that we have inserted into our analysis. And so with that, I am open for questions.
Questions?
So, is there a lot of warehouse storage space in this property?
In this property?
Yeah, like a lot of shipping, a lot of trucks being
I have
used?
not inspected the property.
Okay. But based on the size of the tenants, would it need a large land to building ratio?
I have not adjusted for the land to building ratio as I indicated in my direct evidence.
Okay. And the second floor office space, would that not be an issue? Because essentially this is an industrial strip mall where you don't need to have full ceilings. If the tenants are smaller and that the office spaces of
So when
office
you
commission.
look at the flex warehouse space that's being developed out on Brookside, west in the Arnold Bronco, west of Route 90, that has significantly higher wall height, which provides for better clear ceiling underneath when you develop second floor space.
And has significantly higher rents than this or not.
As in the construction, yes, this was built in 1980.
Yeah.
So it's a problem both in terms of the rents they can generate, and we see what they can generate.
And we're only 40 cents off in rents.
Well, when you apply it to 62, almost 63,000 square feet, that's a significant amount of money.
Okay. And so, you use site-specific evaluations with regards to vacancy rent. How come you didn't use a lower than 6% for the subject property?
Well, as I went over in my presentation of our brief, Murray Industrial Park is, for the most part, owner-occupied, and so vacancy rates are, I would suggest distorted, but this area for investment type properties will have the same impacts as Inkster Industrial and St. James Industrial, affected by development outside of the perimeter in the northwest quadrant. RM of Rosser, to some extent, the RM of West St. Paul, which has development along the north perimeter, there's also Headingland. So there is significant development outside the perimeter. If you look at the information over the last 4 or 5 years preceding the reference date, only 1/3 of the industrial lands developed in the capital region were inside of the city of Winnipeg. 2/3 were outside. That's the competition. That's why you're going to see, actually, in my view, increasing vacancy rates moving forward.
Okay. But that's because there's lack of supply though too, right? The city of Winnipeg's growing, there's more demand for industrial space, and there's limited space available within the city of Winnipeg. So wouldn't the natural extension be on the outskirts?
No, I disagree with that, and in fact, you don't need to look any further than St. Boniface Industrial Park, where they couldn't get rid of the industrial lands, and they converted some to
Yeah.
residential and multi-res.
Mhm.
So lack of demand, actually.
Well, maybe that's a reflection more of St. Boniface compared to what's happening in the southwest quadrant, because there's huge demand and low vacancy rates there.
Not my view of the market.
Okay. But it's your opinion.
Of course.
Can I provide the rebuttal information with regards to the Murray Park Industrial? Because, Mr. Boardroom references the Johnson report, I do believe, with regards to vacancy.
Yeah, I think.
And there's a
that-
big difference between St. James and Murray Park.
Okay.
Prior to the board examining it, I would like to have the opportunity to.
For sure. It's just a summary from from June of 2017.
It's from the
to
Johnson report?
Johnson report, yeah.
Okay. And it's a legitimate rebuttal.
Okay, so within the assessor's evidence are also rents, none of which we have provided in ours.
So we're rents,
just-
we're only looking at vacancies.
Well, except that you can't separate one, the assessor could have redacted it, and so I would object to, just on that basis, the
No,
introduction.
we're permitting it on the purpose of looking at the vacancy.
Perhaps we should recess briefly for the board, for the panel to consider the matter.
Are you worried about hiding something?
Not at all, but it contains information.
I could black it out, or we could black it out. I'm fine with that. It's just, I want to be consistent.
Okay, well, the chair has made the ruling, so we'll proceed. And it's only relevant as to vacancy.
Yeah, no problem. So what you have on the page, June of 2017 and December 2017, there is a separate subsection of Murray Industrial Park, which is different than St. James. If you look at the information there, it shows all the valuable supply, it shows the total building areas, and it shows the amount of space that's being vacated, which is 0, on page 42. And then subsequently, if you look at page 44, Murray Industrial Park, showing that there's both single and multi-tenanted buildings here, showing the space is available for lease. And once again, that's 0. So I'm never going to imply a 0% vacancy, but I don't think 6% is fair either.
Okay, Any questions on the
I
rebuttal?
do, actually, the subject property appears on here as 340-356, so it's all this, you see that?
Yep.
And they show there a net rent of 6, can we apply 6 instead of 623 we've suggested?
Where you can't object to the rents being presented and
Once the
question
evidence
on.
has been introduced. it's
No.
okay.
Well, Mr. Borstrom, you just made an issue that I couldn't talk about the other
Yeah,
rents.
that's
and
right, rents
it's-
are, you can't complain about the rents being on there.
That's something
And
to-
a question on the
Thank
rents.
you.
Sorry. Any other questions on the?
I do not.
Okay, Kent, any questions
No questions, thank
on the rebuttal, anything on the rebuttal?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, I think that brings us to the end then.
Yay!
All right, long day, but we got there.
We got there. I didn't think we were,
See, I don't think this is a long road.
Mr. Borstrom, you'd like to hear yourself speak though.
Pardon me?
You like to hear yourself speak?